5 Oscar Foxtrot.
With Skynet.
I don't know.
Does Charlie know?
Always 9 p.m. Saturday on 146.88. Duh.
Five FC.
Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That's correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anyone need to use the repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? This is KF5PDS. My name is Billy, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. It's open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your comments and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the # break break in your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control. That would be me. And stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.880 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to www.w5fc.org right now for the complete list. And remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. This net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. General announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope, National Space Society events, discussion topic of the evening, Was Up, space exploration and space history, constellation of the week, space launches of the week, recent astronomical discoveries, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days, astronomical Q&A, and our 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. So at this time, I'll turn the net over to my alternate net control, Tom, KE5ICX, if you'll do the check-in honors, please, from KF5 PDS.
Billy, and thank you for doing the net this evening. This is KE5ICX. I'm your alternate net control this evening. We'll begin our check-in, low power and short time check-ins. If you are one of those, we would like you to come now with your call sign phonetically, your name and where you're transmitting from. Please let me know if you're low power or short time.
W5 BLT, Whiskey 5, Bacon, Lettuce, Tomato, Bill, Garland, low power.
Whiskey 5, Golf, Uniform, Sierra, Gus, far northeast Dallas, low power.
Okay, we got three. I've got W5BLT, Bill and Garland, low power. W5GUS, Gus, far northeast Dallas. He's also low power. And KG5, Uniform Foxtrot, Romeo in Dallas. Could I get your name, please? Very good. Jacob, KG5UFR in Dallas. Got you checked in. Anyone else, low power, short time, please come now. Okay, I'll go ahead and take a liberty here and ask if any of the three of you checked in want to bring anything to the net before you disappear into the ether. Okie dokie. Well, it's time for general check-ins then. I will take general check-ins. Please come with your call sign phonetically, your name, and where you're transmitting from.
Kilo Golf 5 Bravo Zulu Whiskey J. And weather.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brenda in DeSoto.
November 5 Bravo Bravo. Bill in Irving.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha, Chaz, Planet Earth.
November Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia in Fort Worth.
5, Uniform Kilo.
Shot.
Let me go ahead and pick those up. We've got KG5BZW, that's Jay near Rutherford. NT5TM, Tony in Dallas, good seeing you today. WB50ZL, Brenda in DeSoto. N5BB, Bill in Irving, good seeing you. KF5JHA, Chaz in Mesquite. Your NB5F, Virginia in Fort Worth, good seeing you. KG5UKU, David in Mesquite. And N5OF, Clay, also in Mesquite. Additional check-ins, please come now.
Kilo Golf 2, Bravo Alpha Delta, Brian in Dallas.
This is Alpha Golf Niner, Sierra Golf, Antonio in Dallas.
Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James, Carrollton.
Three more. I've got KG2, Bravo Alpha Delta, I believe, Brian in Dallas. Brian, did I get your call right?
You did.
Very good, thank you. AG9SG, that's Antonio in Dallas. I got you. KG5 Whiskey Victor Lima, that's James in Carrollton. I've got you checked in as well. Anyone else over here before I had your call sign? Okay, hearing none, let's go over to Echolink. If you're on Echolink and you would like to check in, I will give you extra time. Please come with your call sign, your name, and where you're transmitting from. Echolink only, please.
This is Kilo 5 Kilo Tango X-Ray, Kelly in Quinlan.
Okay, most of the usual suspects have already checked in. I've got K5KTX, Miss Kelly in Quinlan. I've also added JJ, N5IMS onto the list. I know he's probably listening, but probably getting a snack in the kitchen. So usually texts me here, but somehow or another I bet you he's there listening. Okay, let's see. I will go ahead and ask for one more round. Anyone who would like to join us any mode, please come now with your call sign, phonetically, your name, where you're transmitting from. well, I guess setting checked in.
Awesome, Tom. Thank you. And thanks to everybody who's checked in, and welcome to Skynet. All right, let's get started with general announcements. So do we have any general announcements for this evening's net? These can be ham, astronomical, space, or of general interest to licensed hams. If you have an announcement for this evening's net, please come now with your call sign.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
NT5TM, Tony, good evening. What announcements do you have for us this evening?
Hey, Billy, I had a great time at TechNet in the park today. I know lots of other people have said this, but I'd like to thank everybody who was there. I love just going out and hanging out with hams and learning things, and I know a lot of other hams enjoy that too. So it was a great time. Thank you for being there. I'm glad I was there too, and I hope to see you at future events. We do have an on-the-air event coming up this Monday. Yeah, it's not one of the big surprising things. It's GeekNet. It's the fourth Monday, and we'll be geeking out about something. We're not sure what. It doesn't have to be ham radio related, but it will be on this repeater this Monday at 7 p.m. So I've got to get together with my fellow geeks and work out our plan for SurpriseNet. We had a wonderful idea for the SurpriseNet on Monday, October 31st. We've got to get our heads together and make sure it happens, because work has already been done. Something surprising and cool is going to happen at 7 p.m. on 146.88 megahertz on Monday, October 31st, 2022. Perhaps you just like a good meal. In that case, save the date. December 15th is a Thursday. The Dallas Amateur Radio Club will be having its winter diner, or winter dinner, however you like, at the Sunny Brian's Barbecue on Campbell Road in Richardson. We're meeting at 6:30 p.m., and there'll be cool door prizes and great friendship and a good meal. Barbecue is always what we like. And finally, although I may be tired and Aaron's tired too, we both know this is not the last net of the evening. We're going to be having the Afterglow movie discussion at 10:30 or so tonight, featuring Twilight Zone the movie. And this is a rare movie because Aaron has seen it more than once, and I haven't. I might not even have time. I mean, what if Skynet is really interesting, as it usually is? But if you have seen the movie or not, we'll be talking about Twilight Zone the movie tonight at around 10:30, plus or minus about 5 minutes, right here on this repeater. I hope to hear you. I hope to see you. I hope to have a great dinner with you on December 15th. NT5TM.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. All wonderful announcements. Looking forward to all those events. Do we have anybody else that has any announcements for this evening's net? If so, please come now with your call sign. Okay, not hearing anything, so I'll go ahead with a few announcements of my own. The AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 2 nets available to Dallas residents on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Time. You'll need Echolink installed and you registered. You can find the net under Groups and AMSAT. Also, a live audio link is available on their website at www.amsatnet.com. This net originates in Houston, Texas. The Dallas AMSAT Net East, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on this repeater, 146.880 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Tom N5HYP is the net control. All are welcome to check in. First Tuesday of the month is the DARC Club night, so there's no AMSAT East that night. Dallas AMSAT Net West is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.140 megahertz, with a PL tone of 110.9 and a positive offset. The DARC hosts several nets on Monday nights. The first Monday is Ham Fixin's Net. This is a net where you can share recipes or come collect recipes. We have some wonderful recipes that get shared. If you have a question about food or an anecdote about food, bring it to Ham Fixin's Net. The second Monday of the month is MCOM 101, Emergency Communications. On the third Monday, come back for a second helping of Ham Fixin's Net. And as Tony mentioned, on the and if we told you what it is, it wouldn't be a surprise. On-air participation is encouraged. The Tuesday AMSAT East is at 8 p.m. There's question answers, info, and news for amateur satellites. On Fridays is CERT City simulation at 8 p.m. Learn about emergency radio communications via CERT-trained amateur radio operators. Melissa KI5GRH is usually the net control. Visit the most disaster-prone city in the universe every Friday. CERT City, all are welcome. And Saturdays is the Night of Nets, with TechNet from 7 to 8 p.m. and, of course, at 9 p.m., Skynet. And as Tony mentioned at 10:30, we have the Afterglow Movie Net. If there's anybody that's new to this net, the way the Afterglow movie works is we select a movie to watch, we watch it during the week, and we come back the following Saturday at 10:30 after Skynet, and we discuss that movie. We talk about plot, characterization, music, special effects, anything interesting about the film. So join us for Afterglow Movie. We'll have more details on that in just a moment. The first and third Sundays is the Dallas Amateur Radio Club meeting on the air. And the ARRL-NET National Traffic System Training Net is every night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. All are welcome to check in on any or all of these nets. And as I mentioned, at 10:30 p.m., and as Tony mentioned, the Afterglow Movie Net takes place after Skynet. So at this time, I will turn the net over to Tom, KE5ICX, if you will give us the award-winning synopsis for tonight's Afterglow info from KF5PDS.
Thank you, Miss Billy, and here we go. Our directors stared at each other, wary of just what would happen next. They were contemporaries. They were also competitors. John Landis was the outcast of the four. He produced mainly comedies and now is about to direct a segment of The Twilight Zone, a TV show he heard of but never seen. Joe Dante sat across from him thinking, how could I add piranhas to his segment? George Miller sat next to Dante and wondered if he could make a post-apocalyptic film of piranhas, wandering deserts, wearing leather, and driving mashed-together killer cars. Finally, Steven Spielberg sat in front of them all, counting his money from his many successes. It seemed he wanted to make a movie about a zombie version of Walt Disney, which sounded suspiciously like a movie the other three filmmakers had already made. It didn't matter what he did. The admiring public would buy it. Join us for the Fish Out of Water Twilight Zone tribute film. I'm sure Rod Serling haunted the set when these guys appeared. So tonight is Twilight Zone the movie, 1983, tonight at 10:30 p.m. Back to net control. This is KE5ICX.
Great, thank you very much, Tom. And you can keep up with all DARC events, nets, and activities by going to the club website, w5fc.org. This is KF5TDS, Billy, your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. All right, next up is Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope. So if there's anyone on frequency that would like to give us information about the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, please come now with your call sign.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha.
KF5JHA, Chaz, good evening. What information can you give us about the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas?
Thank you so much, Billy. Just want to tell you something that's off script right now. The Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas actually had something called a ghost hunt a couple of weeks ago, but it was mostly clouded out. There wasn't too many observations, so they've extended this ghost hunt throughout the month of October. The details about that's on the TASS website, texasastro.org. Last night, a friend of mine and I, we went out and did a ghost hunt the entire night long, so I'm recovering from a 5.5-hour nap that I took this afternoon. I'm feeling great, but it was awesome being outside and seeing the International Space Station for one of the things that I saw early this morning. Okay, so the next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on Friday, October the 28th. The meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. at the University of Texas at Dallas and also held on Zoom. The featured speaker is Michael Reimer. He's the Vice President of TASS. His topic is going to be about the International Dark Sky Association. The Saturday night public observing sessions have begun again. Unfortunately, last week it was canceled because of clouds, and I think tonight's also been canceled because of clouds. Skynet was picked to be on Saturday night so that there could be an opportunity for live reports from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas public observing sessions. So, if you want to find out more details about TASS, meetings, observing sessions, go to their website, texasastro.org. And that's it for me right now. Back to you, our net control, Billy. I should say Dr. Billy. KF5PDS, it's all back to you. KF5JHA.
Great, thank you very much, Chaz. All right, next up is National Space Society events and activities. So at this time, I'll turn the net over to Bill, N5BB, if you will give us information about National Space Society.
Thank you, Billy. This is N5BB. I happen to be the membership director and member at large also for the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society. National Space Society is a group which is actually international these days, mostly U.S., but it's actually international, which is a nonprofit and popularizes human activities in space in general. Things that get off the ground and go out of the Earth's atmosphere. Our meetings are normally the second Sunday afternoon. Excuse me. Getting confused. This month. So our October meeting was already nearly 2 weeks ago. Our November meeting will be on November the 13th. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my calendar. November the 13th, Sunday, November the 13th at 3:30 p.m. at Spring Creek Barbecue in Irving. This is in 5BB. The presentation will be about Osiris Apex. This is what used to be OSIRIS-REx, but it's been extended. And it's the mission to the near-Earth asteroid Apophis, Apophis. So our speaker will be virtual, and you can attend the meeting either in person or via WebEx. If you'd like to be a guest for the meeting, you can contact me, space@byrom.net. That's SPACE@BYROM.net, or N5BB, that's November 5 Bravo Bravo, @ARRL.net. But of course, the big event coming up for National Space Society is the International Space Development Conference 2023, which will be held May. It starts on May the 25th, which is a Thursday, and continues through May the 28th, which is a Sunday. This is a Memorial Day weekend. It ends the day before Memorial Day. And it'll be at a hotel in Frisco, at the Embassy Suites by Hilton in Frisco. There'll be a lot of activities. If you are a member of the National Space Society, you can get much lower cost. Cost of going to the conference is much lower. You get a discounted price. And you get the way to get it to go in much less expensively, much cheaper, is to be an early bird and be a member of the National Space Society. If you're a senior, if you're 65 or older, it's even more discount, or a student. So that's the International Space Development Conference 2023. Very neat event. There will be people there that are not just talking about building habitats in space and lunar colonies. There's some people that are actually doing it from NASA and from contractors. So it's not just futurists talking about things. It's actual people from the companies that are involved, SpaceX and Lockheed Martin and a bunch of other companies, and NASA. And the keynote speakers are also interesting people, astronauts, and other people that things associated with the dinners are always very interesting, with very interesting keynote speakers. To give you an idea, at the 2022 International Space Development Conference, which was in a suburb of Washington, D.C., I was there, and the keynote speaker was the manager of design for the Ingenuity helicopter that's now flying on Mars. And it was a very, very neat keynote speech, and I got to have dinner on the table with him later. So lots of fun things at International Space Development Conference. I am trying to organize a space communication thread for ISDC, including CubeSats and AMSAT and other kinds of related activities. I'm just starting on this, but so far I've got tentative approval to move forward from the organizing committee. I'm on the organizing committee for the International Space Development Conference. If you are interested in participating and assisting with this, again, contact me any way you want to, but preferably by email at space@byrom.net or n5bb@arrl.net, and tell me you're interested in helping with the International Space Development Conference. We also need help with, registration and people in general helping there at the actual conference with the goings-on. We hope to get in some satellite contacts with us and other kinds of amateur activities, which will be a new thing for the ISDC. So that's all I've got. Much, Billy.
Great. Thank you very much, Bill. And I just want to add that the National Space Society of North Texas has an active Facebook page. Just type National Space Society of North Texas into the search box and request access. You'll receive meeting reminders and club activities. And that upcoming conference sounds really exciting too, so hope you get lots of volunteers. All right, this is KF5 PDS, Billy, your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. All right, next up is discussion topic of the evening. So I've decided to talk about different types of orbits. Lately, we've seen all different manner of launches that have been going up, whether it be manned missions to the International Space Station or just deployment of Starlink satellites. And with different payloads come different types of orbits. So I figured this would be an opportune time to just kind of give a rundown of the different types of orbits that we can achieve. And this article comes to us from ESA.int, the European Space Agency. So our understanding of orbits dates back to Johannes Kepler in the 17th century. Europe now operates a family of rockets at Europe's spaceport to launch satellites into many types of orbits. So what is an orbit? Well, an orbit is the curved path that an object in space, such as a star, planet, moon, asteroid, or spacecraft, takes around another object due to gravity. Gravity causes objects in space that have mass to be attracted to other nearby objects. If this attraction brings them together with enough momentum, they can sometimes begin to orbit each other. Objects of similar mass orbit each other with neither object at the center, while small objects orbit our solar system, the moon, the sun, but that does not mean that the larger object remains completely still. Because of gravity, Earth is pulled slightly from its center by the moon, which is why tides form in our oceans, and our sun is pulled slightly from its center by Earth and the other planets. So during the early creation of our solar system, dust, gas, and ice traveled through space with speed and momentum, surrounding the sun in a cloud. While the sun with the sun being so much larger than these small bits of dust and gas, its gravity attracted these bits into orbit around it, shaping the cloud into kind of a ring around the sun. And eventually these particles started to settle and clump together or coalesce, growing ever larger like rolling snowballs until they formed what we now see as planets, moons, and asteroids. The fact that the planets were all formed together this way is why all the planets have orbits around the sun in the same direction, roughly in the same plane. When rockets launch our satellites, they put them into orbit in space. Their gravity keeps the satellite on its required orbit in the same way that gravity keeps the moon in orbit around the Earth. This happens in a way that's similar to throwing a ball out of the window of a tall tower. To get the ball going, you first need to give it a push by throwing it, making the ball fall towards the ground on a curved path. While it is your throw that gives the ball its initial speed, it's gravity alone that keeps the ball moving toward the ground once you let it go. In a similar fashion, a satellite is put into orbit by being placed hundreds or thousands of kilometers above the Earth's surface, as if in a very tall tower, and then being given a push by the rocket's engines to make it start on its orbit. As shown in the figure, the difference on a curved path, powerful throw will mean that the ground starts to curve away before your object reaches the ground. Your object will fall towards Earth indefinitely, causing it to circle the planet repeatedly. Congratulations, you've achieved orbit. In space, there's no air and therefore no air friction, so gravity lets the satellite orbit around Earth with almost no further assistance. Putting satellites into orbit enables us to use technologies for telecommunication, navigation, weather forecast, and astronomy observations. So let's talk about different types of orbit. Upon launch, a satellite or spacecraft is most often placed in one of several particular orbits around the Earth. Or it might be sent on an interplanetary journey, meaning that it does not orbit Earth anymore, but instead orbits the Sun until its arrival at its final destination, like Mars or Jupiter. There are many factors that decide which orbit would be best for a satellite to use, depending on what the satellite is designed to achieve. The different types of orbit are geostationary orbit, low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit, polar orbit and sun-synchronous orbit, transfer orbits and geostationary transfer orbit, and Lagrange points. So let's go through a little bit of detail on each one of these. Geostationary orbit, these satellites circle above the equator from west to east following the Earth's rotation, taking 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds by traveling at exactly the same rate as the Earth. This makes satellites in geostationary orbit appear to be stationary over a fixed position. Earth's rotation should be about 3 kilometers per second at an altitude of 35,786 kilometers. This is much farther from the Earth's surface compared to many satellites. GEO is used by satellites that need to stay constantly above one particular place over Earth, such as telecommunication satellites. This way, an antenna on Earth can be fixed to always stay pointed towards that satellite without moving. It can also be used by weather monitoring satellites because they can continually observe specific areas to see how weather trends emerge there. Satellites in GEO cover a large range of Earth, so as few as 3 equally spaced satellites can provide near global coverage. This is because when a satellite is this far from the Earth, it can cover large sections at once. This is akin to being able to see more of a map from a meter away compared with if you were a centimeter from it. So to see all of Earth at once from GEO, far fewer satellites are needed than at a lower altitude. The ESA's European Data Relay System, or EDRS, program has placed satellites in GEO, where they relay information to and from non-GEO satellites and other stations that are otherwise unable to permanently transmit or receive data. This means Europe can always stay connected and online. The next type of orbit is low Earth orbit, or LEO. A low Earth orbit is, as the name suggests, an orbit that's relatively close to Earth's surface. It's normally at an altitude of less than 1,000 kilometers, but could be as low as 160 kilometers above Earth, which is low compared to other orbits, but still very far above Earth's surface. Airplanes are greater than approximately 14 kilometers, so even the lowest LEO is more than 10 times higher than that. Unlike satellites in GEO that must always orbit along Earth's equator, low Earth orbit satellites do not always have to follow a particular path around the Earth in the same way. Their plane can be tilted. This means that there are more available routes for satellites in LEO, which is one of the reasons why LEO is a very commonly used orbit. So LEO's close proximity to Earth makes it useful for several reasons. It is the orbit most commonly used for satellite imaging, as being near the surface allows it to take images of higher resolution. It's also the orbit used for the International Space Station, as it's easier for astronauts to travel to and from it at a shorter distance. Satellites in this orbit travel at a speed of around 7.8 kilometers per second. At this speed, a satellite takes approximately 90 minutes to circle the Earth, meaning the ISS travels around Earth about 16 times a day. However, individual LEO satellites are less useful for tasks such as telecommunication because they move so fast across the sky and therefore require a lot of effort to track from ground stations. Instead, communication satellites in LEO often work as part of a large combination or constellation of multiple satellites to give constant coverage. In order to increase coverage, sometimes constellations like this, consisting of several of the same or similar satellites, are launched together to create a net around the Earth. This lets them cover large areas of Earth simultaneously by working together. Ariane 5 carried its automated transit to the International Space Station located in low Earth orbit. The next type is medium Earth orbit, or MEO. MEO comprises a wide range of orbits, anywhere between low Earth orbit and geosynchronous, or the GEO. It's similar to LEO in that it also does not need to take specific paths around Earth, and it's used by a variety of satellites with many different applications. It's very commonly used by navigation satellites like the European Galileo system. Galileo powers navigation communications across Europe, and it's used for many types of navigation, from tracking large jumbo jets to getting directions to your smartphone. Galileo uses a constellation of multiple satellites to provide coverage across large parts of the world all at once. The next type of orbit is polar orbit and sun-synchronous orbit, or SSO. Satellites in polar orbits usually travel past Earth from north to south rather than from west to east, passing roughly over Earth's poles. Satellites in a polar orbit do not have to pass the north and south pole precisely. Even a deviation with 20 to 30 degrees is still classed as a polar orbit. Polar orbits are a type of low Earth orbit, as they are at low altitudes between 200 to 1,000 kilometers. Sun-synchronous orbit, or SSO, is a particular kind of polar orbit. Satellites in SSO traveling over the polar regions are synchronous with the Sun. This means they are synchronized to always be in the same fixed position relative to the Sun. This means that satellites always visit the same spot at the same local time, for example, passing the city of Paris every day at noon exactly. This means that the satellite will always observe a point on the Earth as if constantly at the same time of day, which serves a number of applications. For example, it means that scientists and those who use the satellite images can compare how somewhere changes over time. This is because if you want to monitor an area by taking a series of images of a certain place across many days, weeks, months, or even years, then it would not be very helpful to compare somewhere at midnight and then at midday. You need to take a picture as similarly as the previous picture as possible. Therefore, satellites use image series like these to investigate how weather patterns emerge, to help predict weather or storms, when monitoring emergencies like forest fires or flooding, or to accumulate data on long-term problems like deforestation or rising sea levels. Often, satellites in SSO are synchronized so that they are in constant dawn or dusk. This is because by constantly riding a sunset or a sunrise, they will never have the sun at an angle where Earth shadows them. A satellite in a sun-synchronous orbit would usually be at an altitude between 600 to 800 kilometers. At 800 kilometers, it will be traveling at a speed of approximately 7.5 kilometers per second. Next up, we have transfer orbits and geostationary transfer orbit, or GTO. Transfer orbits are a special kind of orbit used to get from one orbit to another. When satellites are launched from Earth and carried to space with launch vehicles such as Ariane 5, the satellites are not always placed directly on their final orbit. Often the satellites are instead placed on a transfer orbit, an orbit where, by using relatively little energy from built-in motors, the satellite or spacecraft can move from one orbit to another. This allows a satellite to reach, for example, a high-altitude orbit like GEO without actually needing the launch vehicle to go all the way to this altitude, which would require more effort. This is like taking a shortcut. Reaching GEO in this way is an example of one of the most common transfer orbits called the geostationary transfer orbit, or GTO. Orbits have different eccentricities, a measure of how circular or round or elliptical an orbit is. In a perfectly round orbit, the satellite is always at the same distance from the Earth's surface, but on a highly eccentric orbit, the path looks like an ellipse. On a highly eccentric orbit like this, the satellite can quickly go from being very far to very near Earth's surface, depending on where the satellite is on the orbit. In transfer orbits, the payload uses engines to go from an orbit of one eccentricity to another, which puts it on track to higher or lower orbits. After liftoff, a launch vehicle makes its way to the space following a path shown by the yellow line in the figure. At the target destination, the rocket releases the payload, which sets it off on an elliptical orbit, following the blue line, which sends the payload farther away from the Earth. The point farthest away from the Earth on the blue elliptical orbit is called the apogee, and the point closest is called the perigee. When the payload reaches the apogee at GEO altitude of 35,700 engines in circular GEO orbit and stays there, shown by the red line in the diagram. So specifically, the GTO is the blue path from the yellow orbit to the red orbit. And last, we have Lagrange points. For many spacecraft being put into orbit, being too close to the Earth can be disruptive to their mission, even at more distant orbits such as the GEO. For example, for space-based observatories and telescopes whose missions are to photograph deep, dark space, being next to Earth is hugely detrimental because Earth naturally emits visible light and infrared radiation that will prevent the telescope from detecting any faint lights like distant galaxies. Photographing dark space with a telescope next to our glowing Earth would be as hopeless as trying to take pictures of stars from Earth in broad daylight. Lagrange points, or L points, allow for orbits that are much, much further away, over 1 million kilometers, and do not orbit Earth directly. These are specific points far out in space where the gravitational fields of Earth and the Sun combine in such a way that spacecraft that orbit them remain stable and can thus be anchored relative to the Earth. If a spacecraft was launched to other points in space very distant from Earth, they would naturally fall into an orbit around the Sun, and those spacecraft would soon end up far from Earth, making communication difficult. Instead, spacecraft launched to these special L points stay fixed and remain close to Earth with minimal effort without going into a different orbit. The most commonly used L points are L1 and L2. These are both 4 times farther away from Earth than the Moon, 1.5 million kilometers, 36,000, only approximately 1% of the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Many ESA observational and science missions are, or will enter an orbit around the L points. For example, the Solar Telescope SOHO and LISA Pathfinder at the Sun-Earth L1 point, Herschel, Planck, Gaia, Euclid, Plato, Ariel, James Webb Space Telescope, and the Athena Telescope are or will be at the Sun-Earth L2 point. So there you have some information about different types of orbits. Again, this article can be found on esa.int, European Space Agency, under Enabling and Support Types of Orbits. This is KF5PDS, your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Okay, at this time, I think would be a good time to do a check-in round. So I'm going to turn the net back over to Tom, KE5ICX, if you'll see if we have any folks on frequency that need to check in. And then I give you permission after check-in round to turn the net over to Chaz for What's Up. So this is to KE5ICX from KF5PDS.
Miss Billy, and I'll do exactly that. This is KE5ICX, alternate net control for Skynet. I'll go ahead and take additional check-ins. If you'd like to join us this evening, please come now with your call sign phonetically, your name, where you're transmitting from. Please come now.
This is Whiskey Bravo number 4, Mike Foxtrot, India, WB4MFI, Ed, Dallas, low power.
Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, shot in Fort Worth.
This is Kilo India 5, Sierra X-Ray Echo, Brandon, Wiley, KI5 SXE.
All right, we actually got 4 there. There was a check-in over chat. I got KG5DIM, Tyler in Denton, WB4, MFI, Ted in Dallas, low power, KB9SOK, Sean in Fort Worth, KI5SXE, that's Brandon in Wiley. Anyone else like to check in? Please come now with your call sign phonetically. All right, hearing none, we'll move to the next segment. That would be Chaz, KF5JHA. I shudder to think, but the net is yours.
VHA, and my degree is in astrophysics, and I work in the astrophysics labs and geology labs at Dallas College on the Brookhaven campus, and we call this segment of Skynet What's Up. All in one breath. Slide Master, that would be Tom. Slide Master, slide number 2, please. On October 17th, the moon was at its third quarter phase, so the current phase of the moon is a waning crescent. It was beautiful this morning. Nice little thin crescent rising before sunup. On October the 25th, the moon will be new. That's just like a few days from now. On October the 29th, the moon will be at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 368,290 kilometers. We learned about perigee and apogee during our featured topic tonight. And on on November the 1st, the moon will be at its first quarter phase. The moon will be full on November the 8th, and there will be a total lunar eclipse. More about the eclipse in a few minutes. On November the 14th, the moon is at its apogee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is furthest from the Earth at a distance of 404,921 kilometers. Slide Master, slide number 3, please. October has been stuffed with 4 minor meteor showers and 1 major meteor shower. The 4 minor meteor showers have already peaked at the beginning of October. Now, right now, and even last night and tonight, the major meteor shower, the Orionids, peaked with about 20 meters per hour. I saw several of them early this morning, well, even throughout the night last night. More information about meteor showers can be found at the International Meteor Organization at IMO.net. AMG. Master, side number 4. On October the 24th, there is a daytime occultation of Mercury by the moon in the early morning daytime sky. Right now, the weather predictions aren't very good for this. You will need at least a pair of binoculars, if not a telescope, to observe this event. But be careful not to look at the sun with binoculars or a telescope. For the Dallas area, the moon will cover up the planet Mercury around 8:54 a.m. Central Daylight Time. Around 10:12 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Mercury will be uncovered by the moon. And those times vary depending on your exact location. Master, slide number 5, please. In the eastern morning sky on October the 26th, you'll be able to observe the conjunctions of Mercury and the star Spica. Master, slide number 6. On November the 1st, the southern evening sky, you can spot the moon with Saturn just above, what is it? Oh, just above the moon in this conjunction. Master, slide number 7, please. Just 3 evenings later, on November the 4th, just below the bright planet Jupiter, you will find the moon in this conjunction. And slide master, slide number 8, please. Now, don't forget that on November the 6th, we return to standard time. So the phrase spring forward and fall back tells us what to do. In the fall, we turn our clocks back by 1 hour. Standard time to daylight. Using daylight saving time during wars and the oil crisis of the 1970s, and shortly thereafter, it became a permanent thing. There have been multiple bills in the Texas state legislature and the U.S. legislature to either stay on daylight saving time permanently or remain on standard time permanently, but so far nothing has happened. Remind you about going to November 6th daylight time on Skynet. We have Skynet just that night before. Master, slide number 9, please. Of weeks, there is going to be a total lunar eclipse of the moon on November the 8th in the early morning sky. The eclipse begins at 2:02 a.m. Central Standard Time when the moon enters the lighter part of the Earth's shadow. At 3:09 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon enters the umbral shadow. That's the darker part of the Earth's shadow. At 4:17 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon is completely inside the umbral shadow, and this is what we call totality. That's when it begins. The middle eclipse is 4:59 a.m. Central Standard Time. At 5:52 a.m., the moon begins to leave the umbral shadow, and at 6:49, the moon leaves the umbral shadow. Now, for us in North Texas, the sunrise, which also means the moon set, is around 6:55 a.m. So we won't be able to see the end of the eclipse. When we get a couple of weeks away from the eclipse, I'll tell you even a little bit more about it. Yeah, probably next week. All you need is just your 2 eyes to enjoy the eclipse, but a pair of binoculars and or a telescope will enhance the event for you. Slide master, slide number 10, please. On November 11th is when you'll find the conjunction of the moon and Mars taking place in the eastern evening sky. Now on slide number 11, and on November the 30th, Mars will be at its closest approach to the Earth since 26 months ago. On December the 7th, Mars will be at opposition, which means it's 180 degrees away or opposite the sun in the sky. And more about this event over the next few weeks on Skynet. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 12, please. Again, the next Task Club meeting will be held on Friday, October the 28th, and the meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also held on Zoom. Michael Reimer will be talking about the International Dark Sky Association. And TASS public observing sessions on Saturday nights have begun, but last week and this week have been canceled because of clouds. More information about TASS can be found at their website, texasastro.org. Now, slide master, slide number 13. Do any of you out there in Radio Land have a question or need to fill on any of the information? Or maybe you just have a general astronomy question. Come now with your call sign if you have a question. over on Echolink. JJ thinks we get an extra hour on November the 6th. No, we lose an hour then. No, we gain an hour. No. Yeah, I'm confused. So, as the moon wanes at the middle of October, so do these words for this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well, pray for our world. It's the only one where humans live. And until next time, actually I'll be doing another segment on Skynet in a few minutes. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5, JHA, back to our net control. Billy, it's all back to you again.
Great. Thank you very much, Chaz, and look forward to that lunar eclipse. Those are always neat to see. All right, next up is space exploration and space history. So at this time, I'll turn the net over to Kelly, K5KTX. The net is yours from KF5PDS.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is K5KTX, and NASA's James Webb Space Telescope has captured a lush, highly detailed landscape, the iconic pillars of creation, where new stars are forming within dense clouds of gas and dust. The three-dimensional pillars look like majestic rock formations, but are far more permeable. These columns are made up of cool interstellar gas and dust that appear, at times, semi-transparent in near-infrared light. Webb's new view of the pillars of creation, which were first made famous when imaged by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope in 1995, will help researchers revamp their models of star formation by identifying far more precise counts of newly formed stars, along with the quantities of gas and dust in the region. Over time, they will begin to build a clearer understanding of how stars form clouds over years. Newly formed stars are the scene stealers in this image from Webb's near-infrared camera, or NIRCam. These are the bright red orbs that typically have diffraction spikes and lie outside one of the dusty pillars. When knots with sufficient mass form within the pillars of gas and dust, they begin to collapse under their own gravity, slowly heat up, and eventually form new stars. What about those wavy lines that look like lava at the edges of some pillars? These are ejections from stars that are still forming within the gas and dust. Young stars periodically shoot out supersonic jets that collide with clouds of material like these thick pillars. This sometimes also results in bow shocks, which can form wavy patterns like a boat does as it moves through water. The crimson glow comes from the energetic hydrogen molecules that result from jets and shocks. This is evident in the second and third pillars from the top. The NIRCam image is practically pulsing with their activity. These young stars are estimated to be only a few 100,000 years old. And by the way, if you're not watching the video version of Skynet and not able to see the images, you can do a quick Google search for this new image, the Pillars of Creation, and take a look at it. Although it may appear that near-infrared light has allowed Webb to pierce through the clouds to reveal great cosmic distances beyond the pillars, there are almost no galaxies in this view. Instead, a mix of translucent gas and dust, known as the interstellar medium in the densest part of our Milky Way galaxy's disk, blocks our view to much of the deeper universe. This scene was first imaged by Hubble in 1995 and revisited in 2014, but many other observatories have also stared deeply at this region. Each advanced instrument offers researchers new details about this region, which is practically overflowing with stars. This tightly cropped image is set within the vast Eagle Nebula, which lies 6,500 light years away. You can take a narrated tour of this image by going to the James Webb Space Telescope YouTube channel. And coming up on Thursday, NASA will host a virtual media briefing at 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time on Thursday, October the 27th, to share new scientific findings based on observations from the agency's InSight Mars lander and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, or MRO. Science team members from both missions will explain how data and images from each spacecraft, one on the red planet's surface and one orbiting above, contributed to the discovery. So this sounds kind of exciting. They will share how the two missions work together to confirm their observations. There will also be an update on InSight's solar energy status. The virtual briefing will live stream on NASA television, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as the agency's app. Watch live on the agency's website at nasa.gov/live. And in space history this past week, starting with October the 19th, back in 1910, Subramanian Chandrasekhar was born. He was an Indian-American astrophysicist who spent his professional life in the United States. He was awarded the 1983 Nobel Prize for Physics with William A. Fowler. His mathematical treatment of stellar evolution yielded many of the current theoretical models of the later evolutionary stages of massive stars and black holes. Chandrasekhar worked on a wide variety of physical problems in his lifetime. Most famously, in the popular press, Chandrasekhar showed that the mass of a white dwarf could not exceed 1.44 times that of the Sun, the Chandrasekhar limit. Stars larger than that size become a neutron star or a black hole at the end of their life. The Chandra X-ray Observatory was named in his honor. Also on October the 19th, back in 1967, the Mariner 5 spacecraft flew by Venus. The probe was originally built as a backup for the Mariner 4 Mars mission, but thanks to that mission's success, Mariner 5 was modified to become a Venus mission. Mariner 5 launched from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station on June 14, 1967, and on October the 19th at 1:43 p.m. Eastern Time, it had its closest approach at about 2,500 miles above the surface of Venus. Mariner 5 was the second successful Venus flyby mission. Mariner 2 in December 1962 was the first. However, this accomplishment was overshadowed by the success of the USSR just a day earlier. On October the 18th, 1967, Venera 4 successfully entered the atmosphere of Venus and transmitted data for 93 minutes as it descended under a parachute to the surface. It was the first spacecraft to transmit data from another planet's atmosphere. On October 14, 1968. It's now in orbit around the Sun. On October the 20th, 1995, after a series of delays, Space Shuttle Columbia launched on mission STS-73 from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. It was originally scheduled to launch on September 25th, but that launch was scrubbed. It was then rescheduled for October 5th, but that launch was scrubbed as well. In fact, STS-73's launch was scrubbed on the launch pad 6 times. Only one other mission scrubbed as many times, STS-61C, also on Shuttle Columbia in 1986. Both missions launched successfully on the 7th attempt. Also on October the 20th, just 2 years ago in 2020, the Origin Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification, Security Regolith Explorer, or OSIRIS-REx, collected about 2 ounces of surface material from the asteroid Bennu. And I remember that day. It was pretty exciting to watch that. OSIRIS-REx was launched on September 8, 2016, flew past Earth on September 22, 2017, and rendezvoused with Bennu on December 3, 2018. It spent the next several months analyzing the surface to find a suitable site from which to extract a sample. The sample is due to return to Earth next fall, helping us better understand the formation of asteroids and planets in the solar system. An extended mission will take the spacecraft into orbit around near-Earth asteroid. And on this date, October 22nd, 1975, the Soviet Venera 9 lander touched down on Venus. The craft sent the first photo from the surface of another planet. And then we have some astronaut birthdays from this past week, so happy birthday to each of them. Starting with October the 16th, 1956, James Newman, who was on Space Shuttle missions STS-51, 69, 88, and 109. We have 3 birthdays on October the 17th, starting with 1926, Carl Gordon Hennes, Space Shuttle mission STS-51F. October 17th, 1933, Bill Anders, who was on Apollo 8. October 17th, 1956, Mae Jemison, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-47, and she was the first woman of color in space. October 21st, 1950, Ronald McNair, who was on Space Shuttle missions STS-41B, and sadly, we lost him on the Space Shuttle Challenger mission STS-51L. October 21st, 1966, Douglas Hurley, who was on Space Shuttle missions STS-127 and 135, and of course, he was on the first SpaceX mission, the crewed mission DM-2. October 22nd, 1933, Donald Peterson, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-6. And that's all I've got this evening. Back to you, Billy. This is K5KTX.
Great. Thank you very much, Kelly. This is KF5PDS, Billy, your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. All right, next up, I'm going to return the net to Tom. If you'll do another check-in round, see if we got any folks out there that would like to check in. And once again, you have permission after the check-in round to turn the net over to Chaz for Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week. So this is to KE5ICX from KF5PDS.
Billy, and this is KE5ICX. I'll take another round of check-ins. If you'd like to join us this evening, please come now with your call sign, your name, where you are transmitting from. Unusual, but I think everybody had a busy day today. Okay, well, I have to hand it over to Chaz. I've been told to do that again. So, Chaz, KF5JJ, that is yours from KE5ICX.
Why, thank you, Tom. I'm not sure if it's a requirement that you had to turn it over to me, but it's dangerous when you do. Slide Master, that would be Tom. Slide Master number 15, please. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC5OZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week, almost from its beginning in 2012 till May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations, seen the 88 total. The entire sky is seen over North Texas in a year. And in her honor, we have continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week this week is actually a twofer: Piscis, Austrinus, the Southern Face, and Grus. What the heck is Grus? I asked that question last week. This is a crane. Slide Master, slide number 16. And the exciting thing that you all been waiting for, the jokes of the week. Where do fish keep their money? The riverbank. Why did the fish get bad grades? It was all below sea level, SEA level. Why don't fish like playing basketball? No, they're terrified of the nets. Lightweight babies are delivered by stork. Heavyweight babies are delivered by crane. Remember, these jokes of the week are related to the missions of the week. What kind of bird works on a construction site? Well, of course, a crane. What bird can lift the most? Of course, a crane. There you go. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 17, please. Austrinus, the southern fish, is located below Aquarius. The Greeks knew that the constellation of the Grus fish and flowing the water. Two fish represented in Pisces constellation were said to be the offspring of the great fish. Interesting. Slide Master, slide number 18. Fomalhaut, I saw that last night. Easy to spot. The name Fomalhaut is delivered from the Arabic, which means the mouth of the fish. Well, that sounds appropriate. It's one of the four royal stars, or the heavenly watchers of ancient Mesopotamia. The other being Regulus, Aldebaran, and Antares. Fomalhaut is the 18th brightest star in the sky, shining at a magnitude of 1.3. It is the main sequence A3 star, which is twice the diameter of our sun and 1.4 times more luminous. It lies at a distance of 23 light years. That's not very far away. Fomalhaut became noteworthy for being the first star to have an extrasolar planet, known as Fomalhaut B. It had been imaged in visible light. Master, slide number 19, please. NGC 7314, also known as ARP-14, from ARP in his Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies, noted that NGC 7314 as a spiral with a detached segments and having almost no nucleus. Steve Hutchinson writes that ARP-14, is a magnitude 11 spiral galaxy and is classified as a Seyfert galaxy. Seyfert galaxies are active galaxies which show high ionization emission lines. Dave Hutchinson also writes that NGC 7314 has an easy target with a 16-inch Newtonian. I used last night to do my ghost hunting, and reports having seen the galaxy in its smaller, much smaller 6-inch telescope. Master, slide number 20, please. Compact Group 90, which is also NGC 71, 73, 71, 74, and 71, 76. The three galaxies will eventually merge into one. HCG 90 is approximately 100 million light years distance from the Earth. The three pictured galaxies, if you're looking at the video version, are part of the Hickson Compact Group 90, named for astronomer Paul Hickson, the first cataloged these small clusters of galaxies back in the 1980s. NGC 7173 and NGC 7176 appear to be smooth, normal elliptical galaxies without much gas and dust. The stark contrast, NGC 7174 is a mangled galaxy, barely clinging to an independent existence as it is ripped apart by its close neighbors. Master, slide number 21, please. Grus! The constellation lies in the southern sky. Its name means the crane in Latin. The stars in Grus were once part of the constellation Piscis Austrinus. The constellation first appeared in Celestial Atlas in 1603. Johannes Beer's Unimetria. In the early 17th century, it briefly went by the name of the Flamingo. I think that would have been a better thing. Grus is the 45th constellation in size, occupying an area of 366 square degrees in the sky. Grus was once the 12 constellations created by Dutch explorers in the late 16th century. The only correction, or I should say the only connection Spain has with mythology lies in the fact that it was a sacred bird to the god Hermes. Headmaster, slide number 22. Eleanor, which is the brightest star in the constellation, it is the apparent magnitude of 1.74, and it's approximately 101 light years distance from us. Alpha Grus, or in other words, Almar, is either a main sequence star with a stellar classification of B65 or B74, a subgiant. It is also a radius of 3.4 times that of the Sun, 4 times the solar mass, and is about 263 times more luminous than our Sun. Its estimated age is 100 million years. Almar is a rapidly rotator with a projected rotational velocity of 215 kilometers per second. Based on the excess of infrared emission, the star is believed to have a dust in its orbit around it. Wow, interesting. Slide master, slide number 23. Grus Quartet is a group of 4 interacting galaxies, MGC 7552, 7590, 7599, and 7582, located northeast of the star Theta Grus. All the galaxies are members of the IC 1459 group. By the way, the letters IC means, well, C usually most of the time, that's what it means. Slide master, slide number. Higher Nebula 5148 is a beautiful planetary nebula located some 3,000 light years away. It can be seen about a degree west of the star Lambda Grusis. Nicknamed the Spirit Higher Nebula, it is a diameter of a couple of light years and is one of the fastest expanding planetary nebula known, with an expansion rate of about 50 kilometers a second. Nebula occupies an area of 2 minutes by 2 minutes and has a visual magnitude of 16.5, which is kind of faint. It lies at approximately a distance of 3,000 light years from the Earth. This is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 25. There's probably a few more Astronomical League observing program objects in the constellation of Piscis, Austrinus, and Grus. I've just given you a sampling of a few of those. At last count, the Astronomical League has 75 different observing programs, most which have about 100 objects. So, if you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pen in about a year. Slide master, slide number 26, and that is Miss Carolyn's constellations of the week: Pisces, Austrinus, the Southern Fish, and Grus, the Crane. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Sarwell for the research and words on deep sky objects that I use, borrow, and steal every Skynet. I also at times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Now, next time I'll take a look at Lacerda the Lizard. And this is KF5, JHA, sending it back to our net control. Good night, everyone. It's all yours, Billy.
Yeah, we're getting a little skip over space launches of the week and move to recent astronomical discoveries. So at this time, I'm going to turn the net over to Brenda, WB5OZL. The net is yours.
Thank you, Billy. This is WB5OZL with an article entitled Unprecedented Glimpse of Merging Galaxies. Swirling galaxies unite around red quasar and monster black holes. Using the James Webb Space Telescope to look back in time at the early universe, astronomers discovered a surprise, a cluster of galaxies merging together around a red a rare red quasar within a massive black hole. The findings by Johns Hopkins University and an international team offer an unprecedented opportunity to observe how billions of years ago galaxies coalesced into the modern universe. I think something dramatic is about to happen in these systems, says co-author Andrew Vayner, a Johns Hopkins postdoctoral fellow who studies the evolution of galaxies. The galaxy is at this perfect moment in its lifetime about to transform and look entirely different in a few billion years. The James Webb Space Telescope, launched last December by NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency, is the largest, most powerful telescope ever sent into space. Its initial general observations were revealed in July, but the quasar imagery is just one of just 13 early look projects selected through a highly competitive global competition to decide where the telescope pointed during its first months of operation. The team heard their days of President Biden's unveiling of Webb's debut pictures on July 11th, so stayed close to their computers. That following summer, Saturday, Boehner and graduate student Yuzo Ishikara were repeatedly refreshing the Webb database when suddenly the data arrived, leading to a hastily assembled multinational team confab on Sunday to try and make sense of the jaw-droppingly detailed raw images. Although earlier observations of this area by NASA Space Telescope and the Infrared Integral Field Spectrometer instrument on the Gemini North Telescope pinpointed the quasar and hinted at the possibility of a galaxy in transition. No one suspected that with Webb's crisp imaging they'd see multiple galaxies, at least 3, swirling the region. With previous images, we thought we saw hints that it was possibly interacting with other galaxies on the path to merger because their shapes get distorted in the process, and we thought we maybe saw that, said co-principal investigator Nadia Zakomsky, a Johns Hopkins astrophysicist who helped conceive the project back in 2017 when then Johns Hopkins postdoc Dominika Wałęsik, who's now the group leader at the University of Heidelberg, said after we got the Webb data, I was like, I have no idea what we're even looking at here. What is all this stuff? We spent several weeks just staring at these images. The Webb revealed at least 3 galaxies moving incredibly fast, suggesting a large amount of mass is present. The team believes this could be one of the densest known areas in the universe. To travel to us, when we look at objects like this one in the very distant regions of the universe, we're seeing light that was emitted about 11.5 billion years ago, or from the earliest stages of the universe's evolution. Massive galaxy swarms like this were likely common then, Zakomsky said. Well, it's already 10:30, so that's about half the article. I think I'll stop there and turn it back to Net so we can wrap this up. This is WB50ZL.
Okay, all right. At this time, Tom, if you'll do a final check-in round. Sorry, we're going a little bit over. And see if we have any last-minute check-ins. And if you'll get me a final count, we'll close the net up. So this is back to Tom, KE5ICX from KF5TDS.
Thank you, Billy, and thank you for doing the net this evening. This is KE5ICX. It's the last call. If you'd like to join us this evening, please come now with your call sign phonetically, your name, where you're transmitting from. Billy. Well, we had 22 check-ins this evening, 2-2, KE5I6.
Great, thank you very much. Copy that we had 22 hams participating on the air tonight, so thank you to all who checked in this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all the other DARC nets. If you'd like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. So until next Saturday night, this is KF5PDS, Billy, and I'll be closing the net at 22:32 local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use. 7-3, everybody, and enjoy the evening discovering the universe. And in about 5 minutes, remember, stick around for the Afterglow movie net, in which we'll be discussing 1983's Twilight Zone, the movie. 7-3, everybody.
And she's right. We'll be back in 5 minutes, so go powder your noses. We'll see you in a bit. It's KE5ICX. Hey everyone, it is now time for the Afterglow Movie Net. Maybe some of you are still awake. I know this was a challenging day for a lot of folks who are generally on this net, but we'll find out if they're still out there. Tonight's movie is a gem from 1983 and is based upon the Twilight Zone series from the 1960s. That was a 5-season television program, became iconic television. It's been remade a number of different times, starting with the movie in 1983. It was then again made in 1986, I believe, as a TV series on CBS Network. And then later on, it was revived again on Fox, I believe in 1994. I'm going by memory. Then finally a third time on CBS All Access for 2 years, starting in 2019, I believe, for 2 seasons. So we're going to talk about synopses of tell you how we're going to handle this. Since Twilight Zone, the movie, is actually 4 segments, we're going to have to talk about those 4 segments. So the plan is this. We are going to go through each segment. Each person who does check in will get to talk about whatever they want about that segment. If there's any final comments or anything, then we'll go to that person once we've gone down the line, and then we'll move to the next segment. I'll give a synopsis of what these things are as we do them, just as a memory jogger. Right, here we go. I'm going to read the first paragraph here about the movie. 1983 American science fiction horror anthology film produced by Steven Spielberg and John Landis, based on Rod Serling's 59 to 64 television series of the same name. The film features 4 stories directed by Landis, Spielberg, Joe Dante, and George Miller. Landis' segment is an original story created for the film, while the segments by Spielberg, Dante, and Miller are remakes of episodes from the original series. The film's cast includes Dan Aykroyd, Albert Brooks, Scatman Crothers, John Lithgow, Vic Morrow, and Kathleen Quinlan. Other series cast members: Burgess Meredith, Patricia Berry, Peter Brokaw, Murray Matheson, Kevin McCarthy, Bill Mumy, and William Schallert also appear in the film, with Meredith assuming Serling's role as narrator. Right, I'm going to take check-ins at this point. If you'd like to join us this evening and talk about Twilight Zone, the movie, by all means, I'd like you to check in. If you did not see it, which actually was pretty good, it's okay. We will talk. I will give you the introduction to the episode that it was made from, and then you can comment on that. So here we go. I will now take check-ins. If you'd like to join us, please come with your call sign phonetically, your name, and did you see Twilight Zone, the movie?
November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Bill and Irving, yes, I saw the movie.
Golf 5, Bravo, Zulu, Whiskey, J, near Weber. I saw the movie.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony, in Dallas. I did not see the movie. I'm sad.
November Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia, Fort Worth. Yes, I saw the movie.
W5 BLT, Whiskey 5, Bravo Lima Tango, Bill, yes, saw the movie.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brendan DeSoto. Yes, I saw the movie.
Kilo India 5, Kilo Whiskey Golf Cruise in Arlington, and yes, I saw the movie.
Well, that's pretty healthy for healthy check-ins for folks who were busy today. But I've got so far N5BB, Bill and Irving, he saw the movie. KG5BZWJ near Weatherford, yeah, he saw it. And T5TM Tony, bad Tony, no, he did not see the film. Anyway, because some of these episodes may sound familiar, or the segments. And V5F, Virginia, hello Virginia, over in Fort Worth. It's nice seeing you today, by the way. You did see the movie. W5BLT, Bill, somewhere in the Metroplex. He did see the movie. WB50ZL, Miss Brenda in DeSoto, yep, she saw the movie. KI5KWG, that's Grus in Arlington, yes, he saw the movie. Any additional over air before I go to Echolink? Please come now. All right, I see some folks hanging out there on Echolink. I'll give you a chance to check in. Please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see Twilight Zone, the movie? Okay, never fear, we'll come back to you a little bit. If you're still there, we'll ask a second time. I saw Billy there. Usually when she hangs around, she usually wants to be on the afterglow discussion, but I'm not sure she's there. We'll find out in a little bit. All right, we're going to start at the top. Now, let me read the first segment information. This is it. This first segment is a partial reworking, but not a full remake of the episode A Quality of Mercy. This segment was also written and directed by John Landis. Bill Connor is bitter after being passed over for a promotion in favor of his Jewish co-worker, Goldman. Drinking the bar after work with his friends, Larry and Ray, Bill utters slur words towards Jewish, black, and Asian people, blaming them for America's problems. A black man sitting nearby asks him to stop. After ranting some more, Bill leaves the bar angrily and finds himself in Nazi-occupied France during World War II. A pair of SS officers patrolling the streets interrogate him, believing him to be Jewish. Bill can't answer satisfactorily since he doesn't speak German. A chase ensues, and Bill ends up on the ledge of a building where he is shot at by the officer. He falls to the ledge and lands in a rural Alabama, where a group of Ku Klux Klansmen see him as an African-American man who they're about to lynch. Bill tells them he is white, to no avail. While trying to escape, he jumps into a lake and surfaces in a jungle during the Vietnam War, being fired upon by American soldiers, one of whom throws a grenade. Instead of killing him, the grenade launches him into occupied France again. He is then captured by the SS officers and put in an enclosed railroad freight car, along with the Jewish prisoners bound for a concentration camp. Bill sees the bar with his friends standing outside looking for him. He screams for help, but they can't see or hear him or the train as it pulls away. Starred Vic Morrow, Doug McGrath, Charles Hallahan, and a few others, but those were the main guys. Remember Vic Morrow, I think he was in combat. All right, we'll go ahead and start at the top. This one is All You Can Give Me. This is the one round, so you're going to talk about the story or plot, your character, the characterization, what you thought, and any special effects or any final comments. So, Bill, N5BB, this first segment, Quality of Mercy, what did you think?
This is Bill. This is N5BB. Okay, Tom. Well, this is, of course, a sad. Maybe not all of you realize Vic Morrow, the key character in this, he was Bill Connor. He died during the filming. A helicopter that was used in the Vietnam segment, the blade disintegrated, and he was decapitated, and the two Vietnamese children were also killed. That scene, part of the Vietnam segment of segment one, part of segment one was deleted from the movie, although the rest of it's still there. I thought it was very effective. reminds me of a lot of the social comedy, social commentary of the original Twilight Zone series, in that it's showing him his comeuppance for his bigoted attitudes and comments. And I thought it was done pretty well. It was a little confusing. Sometimes when you change to a different location, you had to get reoriented at the moment, just like he did. And it's a little confusing because it returns to the SS officers and the Nazis. You know, you see them more than once. But all in all, I thought it was well done. And I thought that Vic Morrow did a great job playing the key character. And Nazi officery. And yeah. So I guess I thought the segment was just fine. It was sad though because Vic Morrow passed away, but everything else was fine, and the cinematography I thought was fine in 5BB.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next is KG5BZWJ. Equality of Mercy, segment 1. What did you think about it? Everything. Give us a data dump from KE5ICX.
Transmit on a echo link here, so this is KG5BCW. Yeah, I have to say I guess the story as it ended up wasn't terrible. It's just hard for me to. I feel guilty about actually giving it a kind of thumbs up because of not. I mean, you can call it a tragedy, but there's if you read online, which I know isn't going to be completely unbiased, but it seems John Landis wasn't quite as well, he could have done among other. I'm gonna try to avoid that because that's a whole thing you could talk about. But anyway, yeah, the cinematography is great. It was a little bit of a shock to see those words. You know, a bigoted. Yeah. Vic Morrow's character was definitely a bigot. Honestly, it kind of maybe fits more along the Twilight Zone than maybe any of the other stories, but I won't. It's just hard to give it a good thumbs up. I have to admit. Just hearing those words just actually put me in a bad mood. So I was like, as I watched the rest of that segment, I was like, wasn't really, I don't know. It put me into a much more judgmental thing, and I felt even the world traversals and actually makes me think of another story which I need to either read or watch some good version of, Slaughterhouse 5. I really want to visit that. I know certain things about it, but that one's even crazier in terms of time travel and whatnot. Yeah, anyway, that's another film. I'm rambling on and not really saying that much. I'll give it an okay. The tragedy and the incompetence of John Landis in handling some of that kind of overshadows the whole segment of KG5 BCW.
Very good, thank you, Jay. I echo your comments. I'll reiterate some of the things you said later on. Tony, hold where he's at station keeping. We'll come back to you in a little bit. NV5F, Virginia. You saw the film. You saw this segment, number one. What did you think about it? And any comments about anything you want to say about segment one, Quality of Mercy? Go ahead, from KE5ICX.
KE5ICX, and Annette, this is NV5F. It's funny, I watched this movie, I was much younger on cable, over and over again. I don't know how many times I saw it, quite a few. Probably less than 10, but more than 3. I do remember certain segments of it very distinctly. Amazingly enough, this one was the one I remembered the least well. And it was, I always try to put myself in the time frame of when the movie came out, and for the time, it's a pretty upsetting, very difficult, and very, very emotionally charged. This issue has become, I think, even more emotionally charged since then. But point being made, I also think it might have been a way to make a statement, by the filmmakers, a way to make a statement of kind of how far things had come, maybe even since The Twilight Zone first aired. And I thought it was very effective, and I do remember the tragedy that was surrounding this particular segment, and the death of the actor and those children. And I remember thinking at the time that it was very, very obvious that they took that scene out of the segment, and I'm guessing that it could have been a little bit more unified feeling if that hadn't happened, of course, because there might have been things they just couldn't shoot to, tie it all together and make it seem a little less disjointed. But I think that was the whole point. Like Bill was saying, it was supposed to kind of be disorienting, and one of those things that I think it brought home very clearly how bad it is that human beings can treat each other the way we do at times. I think the overall storytelling was good. The acting was convincing. It was pretty well made as far as effects, and very, very effective. So I'll try to keep it short and stop there. KE5ICX. This is NV5F.
Hey, thank you, Virginia. Yeah, I know it's a little difficult going in this kind of the format. We'll see how it all goes. Next up is Bill, W5BLT. Bill, you saw the movie, and you saw this segment 1 called The Quality of Mercy. What did you think about it from KE5ICX?
Probably the most haunting episode of the 4. Obviously, the racial slurs were hard to take. I do remember as a little kid watching the Jeffersons, and there was an episode with a guy portraying a KKK member and that N-word was used. And I remember being disturbed by that as a kid. Interestingly enough, I watched this in high school, and I didn't remember that piece of it. I may have tuned in a little later on that episode when it was on, I think, HBO. So it was a very haunting episode, but I thought it was also well done. Yes, it could be disorienting at times, and obviously I didn't see the picture, but I thought they did a very good job of portraying this guy, his anger, and then what happened to him at the end. I don't remember anything really about the music, although I will say at the beginning of it, when they're in the car driving, when they have the two guys in the car driving, the Midnight Special by CCR, I remember playing that on guitar. I won't look at that song quite the same way now. But I thought it was well done. It is tragic what happened, but they did I think a really good job of pulling you as this guy and his anger towards other groups of people. W5PLT, back to net control.
Thank you, Bill. Most appreciated. Next is Brenda, WB50ZL in DeSoto. Brenda, what did you think of segment 1, A Quality of Mercy from Twilight Zone, the movie?
Oh, thank you. This is WB50ZL. I did not see this movie in 1983, and I don't know why. Except at the time I had 2- and 4-year-old kids, and I might have thought it wasn't appropriate for them and just wasn't in a position to go alone. I had been a huge, huge fan of the show. It literally changed my life in my early teens. And I watched it all the episodes. However, I don't remember this one. I remember the other 3 vividly, but I don't remember this one at all. I don't know why, Matt. Perhaps I just missed one. It's kind of, it has heavy-handed moralizing, but, the way things are, I don't think we need to let up on that until people finally get it. So I think it's still topical even today, 40 years later. I think that sermon could continue to be preached over and over and over again. And, of course, it's very sad that Vic Morrow died in this episode. To me, that kind of taints the whole thing. You kind of can't enjoy his performance, which was and the way that just to me it sets a black cloud over the whole thing. All right, back to net. WB50ZL.
Thank you, Brenda. Next up is Cruz, KI5KWG. Cruz, what did you think of this segment, A Quality of Mercy from Twilight Zone, the movie?
KI5KWG. This was, I think, my favorite. Hated the irredeemable character. I have in my notes here is even a powerless villain is still despicable. There was nothing redeemable about the Vic Morrow character, and there was no redemption. And that's kind of an unusual take for a Twilight Zone, but it reminded me of one, and I went and looked it up, Season 1, Episode 10, called Judgment Night, where you have another basically unwilling person receiving judgment over and over again, and that was the U-boat captain. If you remember that one, it's called Judgment Night. And he was warned by his his XO that they were facing judgment for sinking without warning innocent people. But that's not what this one was, and Brenda touched on it. I don't remember this episode being in the original, and I've got them all. So I went back and looked for A Quality of Mercy, and let me reset here briefly. KI5KWG. And what the episode from Season 3, Episode 15, if you're taking notes, because you might want to watch this one. It's also A Quality of Mercy, and it stars Dean Stockwell doing an excellent job. It's a very different story. And Dean Stockwell's character is very redeemable and is redeemed at the end, and he's thanking God that he didn't end up doing what he thought he was going to. But it's a Korean War setting, and pardon me, a World War II setting. It's August 6th, as a matter of fact, the day the bombs were dropped. The first bomb was dropped, and very redeemable. All right, so that's what I've got on that part. You know, through the magic of the internet, I had that aha moment on how this tied together with the original, and also why the character was so unlikable, no redemption in the story. That's how the Vietnam helicopter scene with the two Vietnamese children, which we don't know about except through the internet, came into being. One of the producers I read had said there's zero empathy for this character. We need to fix that because the audience isn't going to care, which I think is exactly how we all felt. And so what they had worked in is he was going to be saving these two Vietnamese children from a village being destroyed by the army, I think it was. And he was going to die in that scene, but he was going to save those two children, and so you see he'd be redeemed. We're going in this. Interesting directing choices, I thought. In the early scene, we find out we've got a renegade platoon, and a Hispanic man yells out to his teammates. He said, "I told you guys we shouldn't have shot Lieutenant Niedermeyer." Isn't that interesting? They give a Jewish commander's name and a backstory that really doesn't seem to fall into place anywhere else, that they had killed their own commanding officer, and who happened to be Jewish. And then the next interesting directing choice to me was that the Jews on the railroad car looked at Vic Morrow as he's thrown into that car on their way to the concentration camp. And the looks on their faces is not one of empathy, he's not one of them, it's judgment. And I thought, that's a pretty interesting choice, artistic choice that they... Inadvertent reset, but I was done anyway. My radio was telling me you've talked too long. This is KI5, KWG, back to net.
Well, thank you, Cruz, and you brought some really interesting points. I missed those in the film and in that segment. I can fully see where you're going with it. I'm going to hold my comments, see if there's any additional check-ins. If you'd like to join us, we're talking about Twilight Zone, the movie, segment 1, based loosely on an episode called A Quality of Mercy. Anybody who would like to join us, please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see Twilight Zone, the movie?
Kilo, shot on 4.
Excellent. I was waiting for you. I knew you'd show up because you got the late net that you're part of. So, Sean, KB9SOK, the rules are we're just going through each segment. So, spill your guts on this segment, Quality of Mercy. That's the one with him going to Nazi Germany and then Vietnam and then the Ku Klux Klan in Alabama. That jazz. and then after that we'll be going on to each segment after that. But Sean, we're talking about that one. Everything you can think of for this first segment from KE5ICX.
Yeah, this is KB9S, okay. Well, I pretty well echo what everybody said. This was kind of difficult to watch. But, as things go, I think that as difficult as it is, I think it's still time, there's time you still need to see these kind of movies to remind us of both the past and to remind us that obviously bigotry is not acceptable. And I think it's still a good lesson to learn. And, it's good to be reminded of that stuff, even as hard as it was to watch. It's still an ongoing thing. So, it was, I like the comments Cruz made there. It was nice to know. I had Googled this, so I didn't realize that the movie was going to go a different direction, with the kids. So that definitely makes more sense, because you're right. It does seem like usually most Twilight episodes did have some kind of redemption, and that makes a lot more sense. And I'm glad you looked that up, because that definitely helped. Not a lot extra to add. I do think it was very well acted. Hit by zone, which is good. Obviously the effects I think were appropriate to make it feel like it was a TV show still, and I think it was well acted. So I'll keep it short since we got a lot to go. Back to net, KB9S, okay.
Very good. Thank you, Sean. I'll just throw my 2 cents in here. And that is, actually, I agree with everyone's comments on this. I found the most disturbing part of this, 2 things. The first one having to do with all of the language, the racist language at the very beginning. That made me extremely uncomfortable, and that's a good thing. It just, geez, it was like, this is really making me uncomfortable. And I hope that continues, that people feel that same way as I did through all of that. It's a place for that anywhere, any place. The second thing is, and I agree with Cruz, and that is no redemption. One of the things that all stories, as they're told, is the character has to evolve in some way, shape, or form. And as he mentioned, because of the accident with the helicopter, one sequence there where he was going to save the children was a redeemable quality of him, and that did not come out. So the story, while powerful, comes up a little flat because the character doesn't change, and as such, we're shortchanged as an audience. We're expecting something. There's a parable here, but it doesn't have a direction or a way of improving on the character. So that was a problem, and I think it had simply to do with what had happened on set. All right. E5TM, you got any comments on anything you've heard so far before we move to segment 2?
Well, I do want to see something really scary. Aaron made sure I saw the introduction to this movie a few years ago, but I haven't had a chance to watch it. I'm still really interested, and nothing I've heard has dissuaded me. NT5TM.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. And now what we'll do is the next 3 segments, we'll go through them, each of them. These were episodes straight up from the original series, and each of them, though, interestingly, have a little bit of a different twist ending. If you'd seen the original episodes, you go, well, I don't remember it ending like this, and that's why, because they were kind of changed and wordsmithed around a little bit. It still has the same lesson to learn, but a little different perspective and a little different way of handling the ending, or even some of the episode itself. So let me tell you about segment 2. This one is based on a remake of an episode called Kick the Can. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, from a screenplay by George Clayton Johnson, Richard Matheson, and Melissa Matheson is credited as Josh Rogan in the story by Johnson. An old man named Mr. Bloom has been moved into Sunnyvale Retirement Home, and he listens to other elders reminisce about the joys that they experienced in their youth. Bloom insists that being elderly should not and need not prevent them from enjoying life. He invites them to join him later that night in a game of kick the can. Leo Conroy objects, saying that we cannot engage in physical activity because they're all elderly. While Mr. Conroy sleeps, Mr. Bloom gathers the rest of the residents outside and plays the game, during which they are transformed into childhood versions of themselves. They're ecstatic to be young again, engaging in activities they enjoyed long ago, but their thoughts and their families will not recognize them. They ask to be returned to their true age again, and Mr. Bloom grants their wish, satisfied that with himself, their minds will remain young. Leo Conrad wakes up and notices that one resident, Mr. G, has opted to remain young. Conrad asks for G to take him along, but if G tells him that such is impossible. The next morning, Mr. Bloom finds Conroy kicking a can around the yard, having changed his outlook on life. Bloom breaks the fourth wall to assure the audience that he'll get it. Bloom then departs from Sunnyvale for another retirement home in order to spread his good-natured magic among the other seniors. At Scatman Crothers as Mr. Bloom, Bill Quinn as Leo Conroy, Barton Gardner as Weinstein, and Thelma Diamond as Mrs. Weinstein. So, we're going to go ahead and start at the top again. This one is segment 2, Kick the Can. Bill, what do you think about this segment of Twilight Zone, the movie?
Thank you, Tom. This is Inside BB. Well, I definitely remember the original version of this on the original Twilight Zone. And like you say, it was tweaked quite a bit. And anyway, I liked it in general, let's put it that way. Or a little of the whole concept of suddenly becoming, time travel, and this isn't really time travel. This is something else. This is related to time travel, but different. This is magic. That's what it really is. I always have a little bit of trouble with magic kind of appearing in episodes of things like this. What this is. And, I mean, what happens to the young Mr. G? Does he kind of goes out flying like Peter Pan out the window or something? I didn't exactly understand what was going on with him. I didn't see what really happened there. Of course, the people running the rest home are confused by all of this. Their attitude isn't completely correct. Something about the whole way that was played and acted and written, about the way the rest of the staff kind of viewed it, was a little bit artificial to me. It's like they really react like they should have reacted. Anyway, but the basic storyline I kind of liked, and I thought the acting was reasonable. And I love Scatman Crothers and what he did. And, near the end, he broke the fourth wall and looked at the camera, and then he moved on to another place as the magical character. Cinematography was fine. There were just a little things about the writing that bothered me a little bit. And some of that is the nature of this story. The nature of the story bothers me a little, as you can kind of hear from my voice. I guess that's it. N5BB.
Interesting comments. I don't disagree. That's very interesting. I'll have to think on that one. KG5BZW, Jay, your thoughts on Kick the Can, segment 2 from our movie tonight.
This is KG5BZW. I found this segment of being irritatingly Steven Spielberg. It's I like Steven Spielberg. I generally like his films, and there's a series of shows called Amazing Stories that he produced after this film. That this story kind of reminds me of those. The tricks that he seem to be in some of his films, or at least one of them. Like at least the first episode, which was actually kind of a made-for-TV movie, if I recall. Yeah, the artificial of the segment kind of annoyed me because I think he recognize the. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a time that anybody suggested, oh, we need to keep our elderly safe. It's more that kind of attitude is more directed towards children. It's always been, as far as I know, it's like, okay, once you stop using it, you lose it. So it's like, so the whole attitude of the segment, oh, we need to, because we're old and we're frail and we need to do whatever. That just did not jive. I've really said all I wanted to say about this segment. I'm just, it's got his cute takes he normally does on stories, but there's just certain things that are really irritating about it. KG5BGW.
That's okay, Jay. We don't expect everything to be perfect and a home run, and everybody has episodes of Twilight Zone, even from the original series, strike everybody a little differently. Next up is Virginia, NV5F over in Fort Worth. Virginia, what'd you think of segment 2, Kick the Can?
5ICX in the net. This is NV5F. I remember this one, and it is time when I was younger, seeing this movie. I didn't think about each person or anything like. Definitely Spielberg quality of this. I liked it. It was very simple. I don't think the point is all the little nitpicky things about, well, would we let elderly people do that, or how would the rest home, staff react? I think it kind of misses the point. That we can be happy right where we are, and I think that that's still a thing, and especially in our culture. It is a real challenge to realize that there is joy in every stage of life, and we seem to be sort of conditioned to value our youth over where we are later in life. I thought it was creative to have the children still they still had the personalities of, the people that they were, even though they were in their youthful bodies, they still had the personalities and responses of who they had become, and they stopped even to the point where they could reflect and say, oh, it was so much fun to be young, but life was hard. I don't want to live through some of that again. I want to be happy with where I've gotten and with things, and I don't really need to live them over again. I thought the ending where the one very Peter Pan-like character stayed that way, I thought it was actually a nice touch. I had remembered that from seeing it before. I was thinking, I think one of them decides to stay young, and I figured out who it was, and my memory had served me pretty well on that. But I think the point of the story is and even the guy who didn't get to become a kid, he got it, and I think it's a good point, especially in our day and age now. People are living a really long time, and it can be hard to it's kind of a two-edged thing. It's a bittersweet thing, and it is difficult. The scene at the beginning where his family says they don't have time for him, like they do every couple weeks when they come visit, and they won't take him home to stay with them for a couple of days. There's a lesson to be learned there, and I don't know if that lesson was learned by his family, but he was certainly open to learning that lesson. I liked this one, and I like what Jay said about amazing stories, because when I was watching this, I totally saw the genesis of the overall feel of Steven Spielberg's amazing stories, and I think that working on this movie had a lot to do with him deciding to do that series. I believe it first ran in the fall of 1986, if I'm correct. There are a couple of episodes from that series, the beginnings of it here. So that's all I have to say. KE5ICX in the net, NV5F.
Very good, and thanks for that. And you're right about amazing stories. I'm just going to digress here because I'll forget later on, but one of my favorite episodes is the one called The Doll, which starred John Lithgow, who is mentioned in the final, starred in the final segments of Twilight Zone the movie. He may have gotten that job simply because of that. Absolutely my favorite Amazing Stories episode. Next is Bill, W5BLT. Bill, what did you think of segment 2? Kick the can.
Oh, thanks, Tom. By the way, I'm in Garland. I forgot to mention that. I really like this episode. This for me personally this year has been kind of a rough year health-wise, with just everything going on, from prostate muscle, stomach punching, gallbladder, and now need to get wisdom teeth out because of infection, and we haven't completed the year yet. So I find myself going, man, I wish I was young again. Maybe if I hadn't gained some of the weight, all that stuff. And so, watching this episode, I was caught off guard because I was sort of reflecting back to being a kid again and enjoying what that might be like. And then the characters realized that what they would miss if they were young again and pick me upside the head. So I got taken in by it and quote unquote convicted by it and realized it's okay to be in my 50s and grow old gracefully. So it was kind of one of those. I didn't expect that as I was watching it, and just having gone through everything this year, and I was just dream of being young again, and then a moral lesson hits me. So actually, probably this one, I think, was my favorite out of all of them, just because of the, I mean, they're all good lesson-wise used in Twilight Zone, but this one right now is probably my favorite, just because it really gave me a lesson that I needed to take to heart. I thought the acting was great. I did love when they still had the personality as little kids of the older adults. I got a kick out of that. W5BLT, back to you, Tom.
Good point, Bill. Thank you. Next is Brenda, WB5OZL. What did you think of Kick the Can?
WB5OZL. Well, I saw this when I was young. It didn't make much of an impression on me like it does now. Now it's pretty profound now that I'm a couple of years older. I worked with so many older people at the museum, and my own experience with virtually we were not old and decrepit. Our aches and pains and sagging flesh and everything. It's like we didn't appreciate being young when we had it. But being young, I didn't think was all that great. I used to always say, I can't wait till I grow up so I can do what I want, which is, is laughable. And when I was a child, one of my favorite things was just to go out in the yard and run in circles, just run and run and run and run. If I could do that now, I would find that boring. Being a child is to me, it's kind of boring. You don't have the intellectual opportunities that you have as you get older, and everything is just kind of simple. I would all like to, I wouldn't want to be 8 again. I think I'd like to be 30, physically. But that carefree childhood, I don't remember that being as wonderful as they portray it here, or as much fun. But there's a lot to unpack here. You've got, the idea of, you're just as old as you think. You can recapture some of that sense of wonder you had as a child. And, maybe that's the lesson for us all here is, yeah, you can grow older, but don't grow bitter. At least have fun and enjoy yourself and play. All right, I'm done. Back to Ned.
Thank you, Brenda. Next is Cruz, KI5KWG. Cruz, what are your thoughts on Kick the Can?
KI5KWG. Listening to you all, I was not expecting to hear my name called. I was lost in 1978. When my neighborhood, we played Kick the Can and all sorts of similar games, and those were very fond memories. But in 1978, I was dating this beautiful young lady, and she was from a Jewish family, and that's what struck me in this particular episode. It's that young Mrs. Weinstein saying Meshuggah. She did such a great job. She stole every scene, I thought, and it cracked me up. And I thought she really did steal the show. So that's where my mind was watching this. I went back and watched the original version too, and for those of you that don't just like to have those on your desktop like I do, it was kind of interesting. I thought that they brought in the Scatman Crothers character to be the magic when it was actually the poor man who we empathized with, being rejected by his son and so wanting to go home and be with family. He was the one that brought the magic, and in the original episode, and I liked that much better. And his magic went over to everyone else. All of them turned into kids and stayed that way, if I remember it correctly. But that's what I have on this one. I think, no, I'm going to say one more thing. This was my favorite, and I thought the most typical of the Twilight Zones because the stress in it was so low. It was a lot more fun to watch, and unlike basically any of the others that we had, were very, very stressful. So this was my favorite of them. KI5 KWG. Next to that.
Thank you, Grus. Next up is Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, your thoughts on Kick the Can?
This is KB9SOK. Yeah, I agree with the comment there by Grus about it being the lighthearted one, and that's actually one of the points I was going to make too. Is that I think it was nice to have that break here in the middle of going from such a stressful first episode there to obviously being uncomfortable and having this very lighthearted one. I think was a nice pick me up, and it was just nice because it was just a simple plot, and it had that feel good ending. Which was nice, and overall, I like the story. And it does kind of, I think it's very simple. It's just, obviously, you need to stay active, and you need to, appreciate what you do have and try to make the most of it. And as a person getting older, obviously, looking back, I see this different than I would have seen this 30 years ago watching it. But back then I probably wouldn't have appreciated it as much as I do now. I honestly wouldn't want to go back to being a kid myself, because there were things that were a lot of fun, and I do remember got some great memories, but there's things in my life I wouldn't want to release. It's kind of a tough thing there. It'd be an interesting decision if you ever were truly magically had that opportunity. Would you want to do that? And I kind of agree. I wouldn't want to go back to being a kid. It would be nice to be, in your 20s or 30s maybe again, just body-wise, but still be where you're at now. But no, I like this one. I think it was well acted. One lot here talk about more special effects, of course, but. I think it was just a nice, good feel good film. It was a lot of magical kind of thing, but I really don't mind that. They obviously left, it's one of those ones you can't really take seriously. It's more about just, the lesson of it, and overall, just pretty good, I thought. So back to that, KB9SOK.
Thank you, Sean. And this is KE5ICX, Net Control for tonight's Afterglow Movie Net. We are talking about The Twilight Zone, the movie from 1983. There were 3 episodes that were remakes of the original episodes, and then one that was kind of a remake, but more independent. Do we have anyone out there who would like to check in? We can even talk about the regular Twilight Zone. It was a classic, If you'd like to join us, please come with your call sign now, your name, and where you're transmitting from. Let us know. Well, actually, that's not as important as did you see the film. Additional check-in. Okay, I'll go ahead and give my comments because I agree with what everybody else said. This is one of the more light moral help. You can't, or maybe shouldn't go back to what it was. The other, and there were 2 sides to it. Of course, is the fact that the poor guy couldn't go home and family wouldn't bring him home, and he was just not worthy of their attention at this point. That's a sad state of affairs that happens more often than you might ever imagine. the second part is that many people, when they do are asked, would you want to be a younger age again? And the vast majority of people who are seniors, technically speaking, said they would not. That they would not want to go back through this. So the story rings true, I think, in real life, that most of us don't want to. But there's also the lesson about play, having fun, doing things. There's still simplicity of play that matters to us. And we have a hobby. We have a hobby right here. This is playing. You don't go buying expensive radios because you need them in your home. You have them because you like them. You like playing with them. There's a challenge. There's an intellectual pursuit that you've brought to fore, and it's a challenge, and it's not only to get into the hobby, you have to pass tests, you've got to know a little bit about electronics, you've got to be able to use proper operating procedures, all this stuff. It's not an easy hobby to get into, and you've got to have some chops to be able to do the things that you do. Most people that join this hobby really have a technical background and love it. And this is playing, kids. It's literally that. We're being kids and we're playing. Brenda said something, and she caught me on the video. She said, "You're laughing at me." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you why." And the thing is, she says, "Running is boring." Well, yeah, it is, because I do a lot of running, a lot of jogging, and a lot of walking. I do a lot of that for health reasons and things that happened in the last year that I had to do that, and it was highly recommended by my army of doctors, and I felt good doing it. I feel really good doing it, and I think it matters, and I'm going to try, if I don't blow out a hip or something, to do the 10K at Turkey Trot rather than volunteering. I'll be out there with the rest of the group trying to finish off the mile. So, and it matters. The thing about that, though, is that there's a lot of time to think. There's a lot of things to think about, too. It's not like you're your brain isn't operating. The kids do the same thing. They think all the time. They imagine. They fantasize about things. I used to have to walk home from school, and in the middle of winter up in Michigan, up in Detroit where I live, it would be very cold. And I had about a mile walk from the bus station, or from the bus stop, back to my house, which is on the very end of the street with a turnaround. So I had to walk the furthest of anybody to get to the house. And I always thought about I see snow on the ground, and I think I'm flying in an airplane or a spaceship over this desolate world and what it would be like and all of that. That's the simplicity of play and imagination. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's something we should do, and that's a message that is okay. That you had a good time, you learned something along the way, you had fun doing it, but it's okay to be an adult, too. So I, too, agree with everyone else. Thinking about it, it had hope. That was a good thing. Okay, let me go ahead and talk about the next segment of this one. We're probably going to run a little long because we got 4 chimes around rather than 3. So here we go. Third segment is a remake of the episode It's a Good Life. This segment was directed by Joe Dante from a screenplay by Richard Matheson based on a short story by Jerome Bixby. I absolutely worship these two guys. They are some of the best writers that have ever walked the planet. When Foley, traveling in her new job, visits a rural bar for directions. While talking to the owner, she witnesses a young boy, Anthony, being harassed by the local trying to watch a boxing match. Helen comes to the boy's defense, and as Helen leaves the bar, she backs into Anthony with her car in the parking lot, damaging his bicycle. Helen offers Anthony a ride home. When Helen arrives with Anthony at home, she meets the family. Uncle Walt, Sister Ethel, mother and father. Anthony's family are excessively welcoming. Anthony starts to show Helen around the house when the family rifles through Helen's purse and coat. There's a television set in every room showing cartoons. She comes to the room of another sister, Sarah. Helen calls out to the girl who is in the wheelchair and watching television and gets no response. Anthony explains Sarah had been in an accident. Helen is not able to see. The girl has no mouth. Anthony announces that it's time for dinner and consists of ice cream, candy apples, potato chips, and hamburgers topped with peanut butter. Confused at first at the family's unconventional diet, Helen thinks it's just a birthday party for Anthony. Ellen complains at the prospect of another birthday. Anthony glares at her and her plate flies out of but Anthony Ertrick. A top hat appears on top of the television set. Uncle Walt is very nervous about what could be in the hat, and he pulls out an ordinary rabbit. Anthony insists on an encore, and a large mutant rabbit strings from the hat. Helen attempts to flee. She steals the contents of her purse. Anthony finds a note inside saying, "Help us. Anthony is a monster." When the family points the finger at Ethel, she reveals that they are not Anthony's real relatives. Anthony brought them to his house to be his surrogate family. After his kids, he killed his parents, and presumably he's doing the same with Ellen. As punishment for writing the note, Anthony sends Ethel into the television set where she's pursued and eaten by a cartoon dragon. Helen attempts to escape, only to have the door blocked by a giant eye. Anthony vents his frustration for everyone being afraid of him, summoning another cartoonish character out of the television. Helen tells him to wish it away, and she makes the entire house disappear, taking himself, and Helen outside the physical plane of existence. Anthony says that he's met his family back where they came from, since they did not want to be with him. He cannot understand why anyone is unhappy with him, since he believes he provided for every possible desire. Helen offers to be Anthony's teacher and student and help him find new uses for his power. After extracting a promise that she would never leave him, Anthony welcomes Helen's offer and makes her car reappear. As they drive through a barren landscape, metals filled with bright flowers spring up alongside the road in the car's wake. Okay, that's segment 3. We'll start with Bill, N5BB. Your thoughts on this segment?
This is N5BB. Well, first a comment about the plot. The plot is significantly different from the original 1961 as I remember, on the original segment, there really isn't a visitor like Helen. And the boy he does things which causes people to be lacking in food and other things, because he does things stupidly. He does things that crops not grow and all kinds of things. And kind of separates that town, not the house, but the whole town from the rest of existence. This story is a bit different, more of a narrative where this woman comes into this little town, and all the other stuff occurs at the house alone, not the city. The town didn't seem to be affected by the boy. This kind of confused me. If the boy has so much power, when he goes into the town, doesn't he still have that power? Why was he banging on the side of that video game? Why couldn't he just make it work? Why did it affect the TV? I mean, if he wanted the TV to stop working, he could just make it stop working, not get interfered. If he wanted the woman to drive to the house, I would think he could have forced it a different way than maybe had her back over his bicycle. I don't know. Some parts of that storyline because didn't really execute his powers when he was in the little town, but when he was in the house, he did. Again, I'm bothered by the magical aspect of, the kid can think anything and it happens, which is a science fiction trope that's in a few other things that I remember seeing, like the Lathe of Heaven. In that story, the child can make things happen, and other stories like that. It's kind of an interesting plot device because, you have a character that can do anything. Similar to some plot devices on the original Star Trek. That plot device was used also, which, I don't know, I think that's cheating, actually. It's kind of giving somebody godlike powers is cheating, especially when you don't describe where they came from. There's no description of how he got to be like this. Is he really a human or an alien? It wasn't obvious, So I guess some things about the overall plot were just kind of thrown away, and that bothered me that they weren't tied up very well. I was also bothered at the very end. It's like this is in 5BB. It is hinted that Kid Anthony got rid of the rest of the universe except for the house, and then he, I guess, created the road going off into the desert with the flowers popping up, and the woman driving the car on a road which he created. I don't know. I didn't understand what was going to happen in the future. Maybe we weren't supposed to understand what was going to happen in the future. But I didn't understand exactly why she would agree to that or think it was good or something. I think she could have weaseled out of it some other way than telling him she'd stay with him forever as he, did these things. I don't know. Those parts of the plot kind of bothered me, and I wish they'd fixed it up. But like the original story, this plot has those big holes in it, and if you just view it as the concept of some kid with supernatural powers, and you accept that on face value, then without any reason, then it's okay. But again, I'm bothered by the plot, as you can see. The family characters I originally thought were comic book characters. We kind of learned they were lured there. First we see the one character with no face. And then he creates the food in the oven. It miraculously makes it happen, and she goes and picks it up. Anyway, as you can see, I am bothered by parts of the plot, but it was kind of enjoyable seeing it, although, again, I had questions at the end that kind of bothered me. So, I didn't find this one quite as enjoyable as the other ones because of these problems with the plot kind of thrown out there. All I got in 5BB.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I'm going to quickly move on. KG5BZW, Jay, your thoughts on segment 3, It's a Good Life, the remake, E5ICF.
This is KG5BZW. Okay, so you got the... first to address some of the things that Bill said. You were the first part of it. You were led to believe. There's a way to put this that isn't Well, the traveler really is a traveler and doesn't have any definite um, necessary goals other than that she's experienced as a teacher, and that's how it kind of resolves. Um, the well, why didn't he just make the game work? The stuff you can kind of because the element of backing into his bike, and it's like I can kind of see how somebody might make a little magical story like, oh, I'm a little stranded traveler or whatever, stranded, and I need some help, and so it happens more kind of organically or whatever. But I mean, the whole fact that it's a kid that can wish whatever. Uh, the universe basically obeys his command. That's I mean, it's going to be a plot hole in itself. So it's like you can't really think too hard about it if you accept the premise of a kid with such great power. Um, Maybe when you evolve the story, you realize the limitations of that power and whatnot. And so, like overall, I mean, it's been done before. There's actually something that there's a element of truth to it because I mean there have been there. I don't know about historical figures or whatnot, but you can be placed in anyone can be placed in such a position that they have power far more advanced than they're really exactly capable of really managing or whatever. But like have the resources to kind of move around if one is so lucky enough, I guess. So it's about that kind of telling of a story. If you try to take the magic out, I kind of wish they actually made it less magical and took out some of the special effects because some of the shots seem to be really exercising those special effects. Skills more than I really cared to see. As an adult, I think when I first saw this film, I may have been more interested in that stuff. And of course, that was way back then before we had all the CGI and stuff that we have now. And good special effects from old films stand the test of time, and I'm not sure if these really did that. Other than that, I've said I spent more time than I really meant to. So I'm going to head to the next person. This is KG5BC. I'll be back in that.
All right, Jay, thank you. We'll move to Virginia. Tony, we'll come back to you eventually. NV5S, your thoughts on It's a Good Life?
NV5ICX in the net. This is NV5F. So, I think this one requires a lot of suspension of disbelief because it's just trying to make a point, and Bill cited some Star Trek episodes. There were those Star Trek episodes in the original series where the crew was always there. There was always some malevolent presence. This was also the Next Generation, also that was trying to pacify pacify the crew, by, oh, whatever you think or whatever you want happens. There's so many of these. There's one in Star Trek The Next Generation that's a very similar idea where Commander Riker is kind of taken in by this that sees him as a father figure and decides to develop this whole, fake world where he thinks that he has a son and, it's, and I think the whole point here, and I think it's pretty well made, it's that this is the segment where they wanted to get into a little whimsical but dark, and they had to have the makeup and the special effects, and they wanted to play that stuff up, especially at the time in the early 80s where Spielberg had just done E.T. and they were, lots of, and Star Wars, and so they wanted to get all that kind of stuff in there. I think I had probably seen every single one of the cartoons that they were, showing on the different televisions, because I grew up watching all those old cartoons, so they were very familiar. But I think the point here that's being made is, the kid doesn't just make everything happen the way he wants it to, because there's that part of him that wants somebody to want him, and he can't force, deep down he knows that maybe he could try to make them want him by trying to generate some kind of world where, he can make a family out of them, but I think that's how he lures them in, is by trying to gain their sympathies and get them to, as the main character in this, was lured back and gave him a ride home after running into him on his bicycle and helping him out at the restaurant, and that's probably why he would go into town and those kind of things would happen. So he could, he wanted to add some. He subtly was trying to have a real life, but he was still didn't want to let go of control. Whatever was the source of his power is probably immaterial in the whole moral of the story, which is basically, you have to take life as it comes, and you can't make people feel a certain way. You have to just that kind of life. If you could suddenly have everything you wanted the way you wanted it, you might think it would be great, but really it would be very empty. And I think that the part at the end, she saw that, she saw through that, and she voluntarily, once he let go and let everybody go and put them all back where they wanted to be and let her go, that was when he got what he wanted. It's about letting go and letting people go and letting control go and seeing what's real and what's really there, and she was for real, and she had empathy. And I think at the end when they were driving away, that was the real world, and that, the fake world was gone, but he still had the ability to make the real world beautiful with his powers, and that was the goal, was for her to help him figure out a way to use his use the things that were given to him for something good. And I think that's a good moral for all of us. So anyway, I seem to go for the unseen things. There's lots of other aspects of the story and the mise-en-scène and the effects and the colors and the lighting and the cinematography and the aesthetic that I could talk about, but we are running long. So KU5ICX, ND5F.
Thank you, Virginia. And I want to remind everybody, since we're now on the regular repeater mode, that you may want to drop carrier while you're speaking. The old system, well, during nets on Saturday evening, there's no timeout. but there will be here, so after midnight. So be aware of that. Drop carrier a couple of times while you're speaking so that that doesn't happen, just like this. And next is Bill, W5BLT. Bill, what did you think of this segment? It's a good life.
W5FC.
Hey, Tom, thanks. I'm just going to say this. That kid gave me nightmares last night. Wow, that was an interesting episode. Yeah, I think in the end, once he was able to let people go back to where they wanted to be and let them go, she was willing to help teach him. Although I do feel sorry for her because her whole life got disrupted. Who knows what this kid would have done to her. But anyway, it was an interesting episode. W5BLT, back to net control.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next up is Brenda, WB5OZL. Brenda, your thoughts on It's a Good Life?
WB5OZL. Well, the original I thought was a lot scarier, and Billy Mooney was just frightening in his evil, and there was never any redemption. He didn't, he was just a mean kid. But this kid, Anthony, he just felt like he was kind of misguided. He wanted everybody to like him, and he wanted to watch cartoons and everybody to have fun and like what he liked. And when he got frustrated, he did bad things to them. But in the end, he let go of them. So it was a much sweeter story in that he found redemption at the end, and there was possibly hope for him. So I'll keep this brief. So back to net, WB5OZL.
All right, thank you, Brenda. Next up is Grus, KI5KWG. Your thoughts on It's a Good Life?
KI5KWG, we went from a villainous bad guy that had no power, and in this episode we have a omnipotent tyrant. Not a fun story. And the only real comment I have on it is the redemption that we see at the end. It just doesn't belong. It just doesn't fit the story or the person or the characters. That's all I've got for this. I've got nothing on segment 4, but I'm happy to listen. KI5KWG, back to net.
All right, thank you, Grus. I have a feeling the fourth round will be rather short, but we'll move on to Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, your thoughts on this segment?
This is KB9SOK. Yeah, I see this was they changed the story because I think they've seen the opportunity to obviously do the crazy effects, and obviously that seemed to be more the focus than almost even the story. And yeah, I recognize a lot of those cartoons and the characters they were creating. But the only thing I'll say is I take the ending a little different. And yes, he did send her by home, but I don't think that's why she decided to help him. I think she's seen the opportunity, if she can control him, to use his powers hopefully for good. But that's kind of how I took it at the end. But out of all the stories, this was probably my least favorite. This one, just to be quite honest, I actually got kind of bored through part of it. So yeah, that's my least favorite. So yeah, back to net. KB9SOK.
Thank you, Sean. I'll make my comments brief. That it's kind of interesting. It reminded me of something when I went down to see my mother. My father died earlier this year, and I went down to my mother's to help her with some of her financial affairs and things like that. My mother was not the easiest person to deal with, although she's gotten better in recent years because of old age, 91 years old. But when I was a kid, she was, I would say, not the nicest person in the world, and was very frustrated by her life and everything around her, and I probably picked up on a lot of that. And I saw a word card from 3rd grade, and it had to do with Mrs. Stevenson. I remember her because I really liked her. And she had put down that Mom has improved. Apparently I was a real terror in the classroom until later on when I used to stay after school and talk to her. And it was a calming thing for me because I'd go home and I would have complete chaos with my mother. So having that was something he wanted. And I think Anthony had some of that in his experience. What he didn't know is with his absolute power was he was destroying people along the way, and he had anger, and nobody could control him because he was godlike in that way. So I think I understand and empathize with Anthony, especially with this particular ending where the character has finally found a friend. The original Bixby story didn't have that. We ended with everybody just hopeless. So I kind of like this ending a little bit better, although we all know things could go bad very quickly. All right, the final segment we're going to do is Nightmare at 20,000 feet. I'll go ahead and start at the top with Bill. And anyone, if you want to drop off, it's okay. If you want to go ahead and talk about this segment, just stay there and I'll call on you. Bill, N5BB, your thoughts on Nightmare at 20,000 feet.
Thank you, Tom. This is N5BB. I'll try to keep it short. I spoke way too long in the last segment. This, of course, is the remake of the famous original segment from the 60s that had William Shatner. And I think it's interesting to think about the actors that were chosen to play this. As we all know, William Shatner can really emote his face and his body and his actions. And so can John Lithgow. I mean, John Lithgow is really good at being a blithering, going crazy. And the best my memory from the original old episode, the way it was written and played by Shatner, it was a more controlled thing. I mean, Shatner was kind of going crazy, but he wasn't quite running around, jumping around the aisle quite as much as Lithgow. To me, it was they kind of overdid that. He was wasted some time just with him going completely crazy and stuck in the bathroom and can't move and all that kind of stuff. But I would have wished he would have been there thinking or talking to somebody else or doing something else rather than just over the top, out of control. The parts with the gremlin outside looked very similar to the old movie with Shatner and everything. A lot of it was just a lot of the same stuff. And of course, can't stop this without talking about the very last scene. We have to talk about the beginning scene before episode 1, the prologue here, with Dan Aykroyd saying, "You want to see something really scary?" In 5BB.
Good, thank you, Phil. That's called a wraparound story, and that helps to pull together when you have discordant stories or scenes and all that. Called a wraparound. Next up, Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, your thoughts on terror at 30,000 feet. Not 20, but 30.
This is KG5BZW. Yeah, it's kind of a shame that the movie ends on this episode. On the one hand, yes, you kind of got John Lithgow kind of going crazy and actually being convincingly crazy. I mean, he's doing good at what he's doing. It's just it's not the part that I think is not well explained or the story doesn't lend itself to. We don't really understand why he's reacting this way. We just get to witness his overreaction, I guess. I mean, that bit's good. It's just it doesn't. They put it like he's supposed to be this kind of this something of a rational actor, and he's very irrational and very dumb. His choices of action don't make that much sense. The special effects. Actually, I are appropriate and all right, but the whole story just it irks me. I'm at a loss at trying to figure out why I should care about the Lithgow character. Honestly, it's anyway. That's all I got. KG5BZW, back to net.
Thank you, Jay. Next up, I'm skipping Tony again. NV5F, Virginia, your thoughts on Terror at 30,000. I'm sorry, it is Nightmare at 30,000 feet. I always call it the wrong name. Go ahead.
V5ICX in the net, NV5F. I distinctly remember this one from when I saw this movie years ago, and I think John Lithgow is very good at playing that kind of manic, irrational character. I think it makes sense. I think it's well established, you know, from the very beginning that he is just he has an irrational fear of flying, but for whatever reason he has to be in an airplane. And on top of that, it's a classic storyline. You take the person who has an irrational fear, and then there's something real out there that they can't convince in this feedback. They're afraid for irrational reasons, but then there's something real out there that's confirming all their worst nightmares, and they can't convince anybody of it, and then, you know, it just goes into a spin, and by the end, everybody thinks they're crazy, and they're practically convinced that they're crazy too, and, you know, and then the guys at the very end, they go look at the ripped up, you know, the ripped up jet engine and go, holy crap, like what just happened here, which basically says, oh, he's not crazy, everybody else just thinks he is, and, you know, and it's kind of, that one is frustrating for me because I like justice and vindication, and I hate when there's a character who's, you know, right, and everybody is just pacifying them and patronizing them and condescending, and they really are the hero, you know, but they're in the ambulance with a straitjacket on, you know, just losing their marbles. So I thought that he does a good job. Does a good job with those characters, and then they did a good job making that kind of nightmare world where you're trapped in an airplane full of idiotic, you know, fellow passengers that are mostly just, you know, pains in the butt, and you're just trying to get through it. And I think we've all been on those flights. I was actually on a flight from Paris, France to, where was it that we landed in the U.S.? Atlanta, I think. And there was a lady in the row behind me who was obviously manic. She had some kind of bipolar situation going on, and it was a very, she was not all there. She was having trouble, and I think this is a good one. I think it's really a good one, and very scary. The effects are scary. The ending is, you know, scary, where the thing like grabs his face, and and then it just disappears because it knows they're about to land. And I don't know. I actually thought it was pretty entertaining, very scary, just the right amount of scary to sit and watch, by yourself on a Saturday night. Hopefully, gladly, there's friends I can talk to about it. Anyway, I thought it was pretty good, and it was a good way to end the movie because that is probably the most excited Twilight Zone episode, or at least one of them, because of William Shatner, and probably because it's just a good episode. So, anyway, that'll be it for me. K5ICX in D5F.
Thank you, Virginia, and thank you all for your comments so far and for this evening. W5BLP, Bill, final dibs on tonight's last segment. Nightmare at 33,000 feet.
Thank you, Tom. Hey, I like this one. I still like the one with Shatner better, but this one was I thought well done. The sound effects, for me, as a guy who's blind, it sounded like you were on the airplane and things were happening as I was listening with headphones, so I wouldn't disturb the family. So I was transported on the airplane and felt like I was on the airplane, and all this stuff was happening around me. And a child who plays a little girl. So I liked it. W5BLT, back to net control.
Thank you, Bill. And next is Brenda, WB50ZL. You know the story. You know the routine. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is WB50ZL. Well, of course, I love the original, as do we all, and have seen it many times. I thought they did a pretty good job of replicating the story. John Lithgow, he was a little over the top, but he plays a crazy guy really well. This, I think, touches a nerve in so many of us. How many stories center around somebody who says, oh, all my family, they're pod people. They're not themselves anymore. And nobody believes you. It's got to be one of the scariest things in the world where you see something that nobody else sees and they just think you're crazy. And that would be enough to drive you crazy in itself. Which, he started off being a lot off balance. Then it just got worse. So, I won't belabor the point. Back to net, WB50ZL.
Hey, thank you, Brenda. Next, Cruz, you said you were done. If you're still there, if you got any comments, come back to us, KI5KWG.
KI5KWG, just had fun tonight. This is the longest one of these nets I've ever set in on. Still, a lot of fun. Thanks, y'all. Good night. KI5KWG, back to net.
And this is the longest one we've done. There was one that is 7, 8, 9 minutes longer than this. Next up is Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, your final thoughts for here at 33,000 feet.
W5FC. This is KB9SOK. Oh, I think Tom just issued a challenge. Can we stretch this out for another 7 minutes? Just kidding. Yeah, no, I actually like this one. I do think there is a bit, they might have overdone it to some extent, stretched out here longer than needed to be. But I do think John played it very, very well. Obviously I like the original too, of course, like everybody else. But one of the things I'll just kind of point out for me anyway, I kind of like the part there where, there was almost, they were kind of almost misleading you. They were almost making you think that maybe the girl actually has something to do with it. I felt, maybe she created the monster and maybe she was in control. Almost kind of like back to the other segment that we had earlier. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It almost like they were starting to misdirect you, that obviously you figured out that she wasn't involved in it. And I too like the very ending there when, the mechanics come out like, okay, yeah, we'll get this fixed, get them going, and he looks at it, and obviously there was no way they were fixing that. Yeah, no, the part, the guy not being believed, yeah, I would have liked to seen him get, no, to figure out that he was telling the truth, but all in all, enjoyed it, been a good net, back to net control. KP9 SOK.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and make my comments on this one. You know me, I love aviation, and I'm wearing my Constellation T-shirt tonight. But one of the things that's interesting is if you notice there's stock footage of the 707. It's a global airlines plane. That's stock footage from the movie Airport from, 1967, I think it was, maybe a little later. So there was that, and then when they are on board the plane, you'll see that Lifco has a pillow behind him, and it has the AA logo on it, the newer one. So not sure what happened there, but somehow they found a pillow and stole it from American Airlines. Finally, the engines outside, the ones that's all ripped apart, are the classic 707 and DC-8 JT3D engines, the intermediate engine that was used on those aircraft. Eventually, a CFM56 would be used on mainly DC-8s, but the 707s were going out of service at that point. But you notice that, and it's a genuine JT3D, the way they've got it all mangled. So I thought that was pretty interesting and pretty cool with that. And as mentioned, this is probably the most notable of all the episodes. It's been redone twice. This is the first time it was redone. It was redone a second time with a different ending, a more curious ending. I think I actually like the second ending, the revamped one, in the new version that was done with CBS, the paywall, whatever it's called, Paramount Plus now, but from 2 years ago, where they did the finale, and the entire crew turns against our erstwhile traveler. I won't give it away. If you get a chance to see the episode, I think you'll like it. I actually think it's better ending than this one. Okay, that's it from me. Anyone have any comments or want to bring anything? Tony, most notably, I've skipped over you several times. You probably went to bed, but does anybody have any comments that they want to bring to the net before we close? Please come with your call.
BB, very quick.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
November 5 Sierra, Quebec Alpha.
All right, I got three of them. N5BB Bill, NT5TM Tony, and then N5SQA Ron. So, Bill, N5BB, go ahead.
This is N5BB. Notice this is early 80s. We're still smoking on parts of the flights, although they have the do not smoke sign that comes on and everything. And they have the ashtrays in the armrest, and he's putting his cigarette out in the ashtray. Wow, it's been a long time since I was in the airplane that is smoking area. And then at the end of the movie, where they are outside, and the crew chief is coming up to, he says, make sure there's no fuel leaks, and he's got a cigar or something chomped, and he's smoking while he's climbing into the thing, looking at the engine, looking for fuel leaks. Oh, my golly. N5BB.
Why didn't I pick up on that? Okay, very good. I like that comment. I'll use it for future reference. NT5TM, Tony, go ahead.
Tom, very often hearing people's comments is more interesting than watching the movie. So, although I did not get a chance to see the movie, I know Erin is still interested. I have an interest, and I know that she'll be happy to watch this with me soon. So, thank you all for your comments. I'll be sure to be looking for things people have pointed out, and I did appreciate getting to listen to the net. NT5TM.
Thank you, Tony. And last but not least is Ron, N5SQA. We've been talking about Twilight Zone, the movie from 1983. What have you?
Good evening, Tom, and everybody else. I've been listening, I got in on the middle of Bill's dissertation just before midnight, and you guys are amazing talking about this stuff every week. Just wanted to say hello, N5SQA.
Thank you, Ron. We appreciate you checking in so we know that others are out there. And I've heard and gotten emails occasionally from folks that have never checked in on the net, but they do listen in. And there is an audience out there. There's people that do listen in. All right, next week's movie, it is Halloween and Halloween weekend. So we have a horror movie next week, Night of the Living Dead from 1968. We've never done that one, so, well, we haven't done a lot of these, but that's one that we will be doing. Should be interesting. Launch the series of movies after that, sequels. I will send out the information to everybody sometime tomorrow morning where you can find the movie. It should be fairly easy. It's almost in public domain, but at any rate, it'll be out there. And you can send an email to me, ke5icx at yahoo.com. If you want to get on the list, or you can go to the Facebook page, which is Afterglow Movie, 2 words, Afterglow and Movie, and you can find the movies from there. Good night, everyone. I had a blast. This was a really interesting discussion, but I enjoyed them anyway, so we'll see you next time. This is KE5ICX. I'm clear. Bye-bye.